Chapter 1855. After pondering for a moment, Suyu said in a low voice, "The Saint Lady is very powerful. There is no need to rush to rescue her." As soon as these words came out, everyone's thoughts appeared in his ears. TSK, the sect master really has a lot of resentment towards the saintess. If I were the sect leader, I would naturally hope for the saint to die in White Dragon Mountain forever. However, the saint controls the sect leader's life and death. I'm afraid I have no choice but to go. If the saintess were to crush that shackle before she died, I'm afraid the sect master would also die. So you heard every single one of their thoughts. The saintess grabbed the shackles? Control the sect master's life? It was an unexpected discovery. However, how could a mere saintess who is only a peak overlord be able to control the life and death of the sect master so easily? Sect master is wise. The saintess has the supreme artifact of the moon-worshipping cult, the divine wheel of the black moon. Her life will not be in danger for the time being. Sect master, you don't have to worry, Protector Bali said respectfully. A bunch of bootlickers. The blue veins on Suyu's forehead were twitching nonstop. The ones who died weren't you, right? Of course, Suyu wouldn't be the one to die. No matter how the Holy Maiden controlled the life and death of the Baiwa sect leader, she could not control Suyu. However, if he really ignored it, he was afraid that his identity as the sect master would arouse suspicion. Even though his life was being controlled, he was still able to remain calm and composed. No matter how muddle-headed Protector by Li and the others were, they should be able to sense his abnormality. Furthermore, the last place the Emperor Killer Sword had appeared was in the White Dragon Mountain range, right? According to the information obtained, the Emperor Killer Sword had completely disappeared after escaping to the White Dragon Mountain range. No one knew if he was hiding in the White Dragon Mountain range or if he had escaped somewhere else. He had already planned to personally head to the White Dragon Mountain range to investigate. Now, he could save the Saintess at the same time. Sect leader, it has already been a year since we opened the Black Moon Divine Pool. If we don't absorb it soon, I'm afraid it will evaporate and go to waste. Do you think we should gather the higher-ups of the sect to prepare and absorb it? The transparent protector's eyes flashed with a hint of hidden passion. Absorbing faith every month was what the higher-ups of the church desired the most. However, the sect master had been in seclusion for an entire year, which worried them to death. Suyu caressed the key token in his pocket, while his gaze became slightly fervent. He was also curious about how powerful the moon-worshipping cult's power of faith was. Gather the higher-ups. We will open the Black Moon Divine Pool tomorrow. Suyu waved his sleeves and immediately made a decision. Not long after Xiao Chun returned to his bedroom, Princess Rukin came over after hearing the news. "Brother Suyu, didn't you spend too much time in seclusion?" Princess Rukin's pretty face relaxed slightly. For the past year, Suyu had been in secluded training. She was afraid that she would accidentally expose herself, so she was on tenterhooks. Now that Suyu had returned, it was as if he had found his master. Suyu smiled as he looked at her, his brows slightly furrowed. In the past, when he probed her soul, he couldn't feel anything strange. But now that his soul had become stronger, with a casual look, he discovered that her soul was indeed different from an ordinary person's. In the depths of her soul realm, there was a faintly discernible dark red line that had fused with her soul and was growing together with it. If one exists, everything exists. If one is destroyed, everything will be destroyed. Soul symbiotic body. So he was secretly surprised. Recently, he had gained some insights into the soul. Only then did he know that such a special soul existed in the world. The two souls were born as one, each controlling the other's body. Based on the current situation, Princess Rukin's soul was far stronger than Ling Long's. Hence, Princess Rukin was in charge most of the time. Ling Long's existence is more or less a hidden danger. So he was deep in thought. The next time she woke up, she would take away the Emperor Killing Sword and threaten Suyu's life. Just her existence alone was a threat to Princess Rukin. As far as he knew, the soul symbiotic body wouldn't exist forever. Usually, when one soul became completely powerful, it would suppress the other soul forever. Although Princess Linglong's soul was weak, it was far more refined than Rooken's. It was only a matter of time before she could suppress Princess Rooken. He had promised Dongfang Xia that he would treat Princess Rooken well. Naturally, he wouldn't go back on his word. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but take out a dragon-shaped necklace. After studying it, he discovered that it was a protective treasure made by Dongfang Xia himself. It had two magical powers, one offensive and one defensive. The offensive was Dongfang Xia's full-force attack. Any powerful double-crown emperor would undoubtedly die. If a three-crown emperor were to be ambushed, he would most likely die as well. The defensive was the all-out defense of a three-crowned emperor. As long as the opponent wasn't too much stronger than him, he would be able to withstand a blow from a three-crowned emperor. The dragon and the phoenix had consumed a great deal of Dongfang Xia's power. Otherwise, during the battle with the moon-worshipping sect master, Dongfang Xia wouldn't have been at such a disadvantage. He had been wrong about Dongfang Xia all this time. Hence, it would be best if he could find a way to eliminate or suppress Princess Linglong's soul to relieve Rooken of her worries. But before he could find a way to remove it, the safest method was to strengthen Princess Rooken's own soul. The stronger she was, the more difficult it would be for Princess Linglong. Tomorrow, I will open the Black Moon Divine Pool. Follow me. If the power of faith is beneficial to your cultivation, we could try it together. Princess Rooken had been here for a year, but she had not heard much about the power of faith. It was very mysterious. It was said that by absorbing the power of faith, one's cultivation would be 10 times faster than ordinary people. The rise of the moon-worshipping sect overnight was due to the power of faith. If she could absorb the power of faith, her cultivation could improve rapidly. The next morning, the guardian elder and the missionary elder were all waiting in the sect master's great hall. Suyu arrived a little late with the sect master's wife. "Greetings, sect master's wife." Many elders greeted them respectfully. "Dispense with the formalities. The Black Moon Divine Pool has not been open for a year. Elders, follow me." Suyu led the crowd to the forbidden area of the main altar, a giant cave built deep underground. From the entrance of the cave to the forbidden area, there was an imperial guard every 10 steps, standing guard all year round. No one was allowed to approach. The security was very tight. In the depths of the cave was a giant spiritual pool built from an unknown black material. It was sealed off by a thick stone door. Suyu tried to probe it with his soul, but was immediately repelled. Even with his current soul strength, he could not penetrate it. It was obvious how strong the stone door was. Even a three-crowned divine warrior might not be able to break open the stone door. There was a keyhole on the stone door, just like the key Suyu had. Filled with anticipation, Suyu took out the key and opened it. Suddenly, a rich, mysterious power came rushing at him. What he saw was a spiritual pool suspended in midair. The pool was overflowing with black air currents. The air currents gathered together, condensing into a liquid that resembled water. The powerful power of faith was bursting forth from the pool. In an instant, Suyu seemed to see countless devout believers kneeling before the Black Moon statue and kowtowing. Wisps of faith were stripped from their bodies and gathered on the statue. They were then transferred through the statue to the pool. All the power of faith gathered in the territory of the moon-worshipping cult was gathered here. The higher-ups of the moon-worshipping cult behind him were ravenous and thirsty. "Go, all of you." Following Suyu's order, all of them rushed in and devoured the power of faith greedily and happily. They were all fighting to be the first, afraid of falling behind. Princess Rooken was also very envious, but Suyu did not move. She did not act rashly. Suyu's eyes narrowed slightly, staring at everyone's every move. The usually calm guardians, in the face of the power of faith, were wild and excited. Is this really faith? Suyu was suspicious. True faith should make people more devout, but the guardians before him had turned into hungry beasts. His eyes flashed as he observed the bodies of the people. He found that after the power of faith entered their bodies, it immediately turned into the divine energy they needed, rapidly improving their cultivation. The more they absorbed, the more they improved. It seemed like there was no problem, but Suyu had always believed in the saying, the way of heaven is balanced. The way of heaven was to take away the surplus and make up for the deficiency. Such a domineering way of improving one's cultivation must have hidden dangers. Sure enough, Suyu sensed something out of the blue. When he took a closer look, he was surprised to find that although the power of faith integrated into their bodies had turned into divine energy, a very small part of it had turned into something else and entered their souls. Guardian Bai Li absorbed the most power of faith. In his soul, there was an additional layer of transparent bugs that ordinary souls could not detect. They attached themselves to the soul and greedily devoured the soul essence. Looking at the translucent guardian, the other 4 guardians, and the hundreds of preaching elders, all of them were in the same situation. Inside their soul divine crystals, there were bugs gnawing on them. Guardian Bai Li was the most severely affected. His soul divine crystal was almost filled with bugs, and there were several layers of them. Seeing this scene, Suyu's scalp went numb, and his heart trembled. There was really no such thing as an advantage in this world. The technique of absorbing the power of faith really had endless hidden dangers. Guardian Bai Li and the others had only been cultivating for a short period of time. Coupled with the fact that their souls grew along with their cultivation, they did not feel the loss of their soul essence. However, once their cultivation stagnated for a long time, the speed of the bugs gnawing would far exceed the growth of their souls. When that happened, there would be a huge problem. Either their minds would be damaged and they would become wild beasts, or their souls would be devoured cleanly bit by bit, turning them into walking corpses. Fortunately, Suyu had been in seclusion for a year. In the great void cave, the colorful divine light had entered his body, and his eyes were looking at the soul at a much higher level than before. Otherwise, if he had absorbed the power of faith without knowing what was going on, there would have been endless troubles. Princess Rukin could not stand it any longer. She tugged at Suyu's sleeves. "Shall we go too?" It would have been better if he had not known. Now that he knew, how could he push Princess Rukin into the fire pit? However, when he caught a glimpse of the dark red, symbiotic soul in the depths of her soul, he had an idea. His eyes flickered, and 2 silver flames flew out, turning into a firebird. With a shrill cry, the firebird burrowed in a Guardian Bai Li's soul divine crystal and devoured an invisible bug. After eating it, the firebird's intelligent eyes were filled with excitement, as if it was particularly fond of the bug. A smile flashed across the corners of Suyu's mouth. "All right, go ahead. However, you must bring this silver firebird with you." Suyu beckoned casually, and the firebird flew back into his palm. Princess Rukin sized it up curiously. "What is this?" "A life-saving item. Close your eyes." Princess Rukin closed her eyes strangely, allowing the silver firebird to burrow into her soul and guard her mind. Chapter 1856. Hearing that, Princess Rukin delightedly entered the center of the spiritual pool to absorb the most concentrated power of faith. As the wife of the sect master, no one dared to fight for her. As Suyu watched, Princess Rukin absorbed a large amount of power of faith. As expected, 7 to 8 formless bugs burrowed into her mind, ready to devour her frail soul. But the silver firebird immediately flew over and devoured the bugs on the spot. Only one was spared. That was the bug that devoured the dark red soul. The silver firebird chose to ignore it. Not long after, more insects came in. For example, the first batch of bugs that dared to devour Princess Rukin's soul were immediately devoured by the silver firebird. However, the silver fire raven didn't mind eating that dark red soul. Although the bugs had no intelligence, they devoured indiscriminately. But they could not withstand the increasing number of bugs. Gradually, the dark red soul was crawling with bugs, devouring it with gusto. The dark red soul seemed to sense something and trembled. But there was nothing it could do but allow the bugs to continue devouring it. Hee, as repayment for the curse of life and death, enjoy it. I hope your soul will still be intact the next time we meet. Suyu smiled. This discovery was unexpected. Even if he could not destroy Princess Linglong's remnant soul, he could still weaken it. She might not have the same strength the next time she came out. Of course, no one knew how many hidden killing moves the daughter of the Dragon Emperor had. Weakening her soul as much as possible was the right thing to do. Secretly ordering the Silver Firebird to guard Princess Rooken's mind, Suyu left the Forbidden Land and headed for the White Dragon Mountains. The White Dragon Mountains were located at the border of the moon-worshipping cult and the Dustless Moon Clan. Back then, the moon-worshipping cult had been rising and expanding rapidly, clashing with many surrounding forces. The White Dragon Mountains were one of them. This place used to belong to the Dustless Moon Clan, but it was later occupied by the moon-worshipping cult, who set up the White Dragon subaltar here. So you put the token he carried with him into his storage device, isolating its aura. This way, the followers of the moon-worshipping cult would not know that Suyu was the moon-worshipping cult leader. He arrived at the main city of the White Dragon Mountains, White Dragon City. The main city had been burnt to ashes, and the heads of the moon-worshipping cult hung from the city walls. When Suyu arrived at the foot of the city wall, he looked at the familiar head on the list and sighed inwardly. The moon-worshipping cult had set up a branch here, the White Dragon Branch. Among the heads, there were the local branch master, 3 deputy branch masters, and 9 hall masters. Only a deputy branch leader and a hall leader were not among them. No one knew if he had escaped or if he had been decapitated. The cultivators that passed by all revealed expressions of fear as they carefully accepted the city entrance inspection. All of you, take off your outer garments and expose your foreheads. Anyone who is a subordinate or covers up for the moon-worshipping disciples will be killed without mercy. The city gate guards sternly berated. There was a pile of corpses at the corner of the city wall. They were all moon worshippers. Although Suyu had no feelings for the moon-worshipping cult, he didn't want to see such a massacre. These followers might not have done anything bad, but they were killed and destroyed because of their faith. The Dustless Moon sect's methods were too vicious and cruel. With that in mind, Yin and Yangqi appeared above his head, and a moment later, he disappeared. The guards at the entrance felt as if someone had disappeared. They looked over in surprise, not knowing that someone had left. When he reappeared, he was already standing at the former White Dragon Division with his hands behind his back. The division had been smashed into ruins, and a collapsed statue of the Black Moon had been trampled and destroyed. It seems that there is no one left in the division. If I want to get the latest information about the Emperor killing Sword and the Saint Lady, I have to start from other sources. Suyu glanced at the crowd that was hurrying past. The more chaotic a place was, the more prosperous the black market was. It wasn't difficult to find out information there. A certain inconspicuous little wine shop, however, was doing exceptionally well. There were many drinkers coming and going. Suyu smiled faintly and stepped inside. A young waiter said, "What do you want, sir?" "I want to buy some information." The waiter looked at Suyu strangely. "Sir, this is a restaurant. How can we sell information?" Suyu smiled faintly. "Oh, is that so? A divine warrior of heaven and earth working as a waiter. This is the first time I've seen such a small restaurant." Suddenly, the waiter's face changed dramatically, and he was in awe. He quickly bowed his head and said, "So it is you, sir. Please go to the back hall to talk." Moving to the back hall, he saw people coming in and out of an inconspicuous firewood room. It seemed like a lively little restaurant, but in fact all the customers came in and out of this firewood room. He was no stranger to this scene. Stepping inside, an extraordinarily bustling market came into view. "Sir, welcome to the White Dragon Mountain Range branch of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce." Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce? Suyu's heart skipped a beat. The Dark Star civilization had its own branch too. The influence of this Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce was terrifying. He just didn't know if the news of him killing the phantom of the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce in the Dayu civilization had reached here. "What do you want, sir?" It was the same waiter from before, enthusiastically leading the way. "Information, first-hand information. Money is not a problem," Suyu said calmly. The waiter's face was full of enthusiasm. Such a generous senior was most welcomed by the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. Under the waiter's guidance, they arrived at the local intelligence agency. Unlike the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce of the Dayu Empire, the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce of the Dark Star civilization was open to the public. However, due to the recent chaos of war, they had switched from being open to being secretive for safety reasons. Therefore, the reliability of the intelligence agency here was far greater than the black market of the Dayu Empire. Oldly, I brought you a distinguished guest. The waiter made way for the crowd in the queue and cut the queue. Many people in the queue were full of complaints, but when they saw the waiter's face, they all fell silent, not daring to resist in the slightest. In the inner hall, a hale and hearty old man came out to welcome them. He looked Suyu up and down and said, "My friend, please come in." The waiter sent Suyu in and left, leaving the two to talk. "May I ask what you want to ask?" The intelligence agency's information is divided into 3 grades. Third-grade information is ordinary, which can be obtained by asking around carefully. Second-grade information is confidential, which is difficult to obtain without special channels. First-grade information is top secret, and only our intelligence agency knows about it. Without a word, Suyu fished out a bag of divine stones and threw it on the table. Oldly had seen many rich and imposing people, so a mere 100 low-grade divine stones was nothing to him. However, when he glanced at it, he realized that it wasn't a low-grade divine stone, but a top-grade divine stone. In other words, it was 1,000,000 divine stones. Oldly's expression changed drastically. He was moved, and the respect on his face deepened. Anyone who could take out 1,000,000 divine stones in one go was definitely a big shot. "You don't have to care about the information I ask. You just have to answer 2 of my questions." Oldly was no longer disrespectful. He said, "Senior, please speak. First, where's the Emperor killing sword?" Oldly smiled bitterly as expected. "I'm not surprised by your questions. However, if it were someone else asking, I would naturally answer perfunctorily. But since it's you, I have a piece of information that might be related to the Emperor killing sword." "Speak." Suyu's heart moved. Oldly tapped his finger on the table. "Do you know why the Dustless Moon faction suddenly attacked the White Dragon Mountains a year ago? You should know that this place is lacking in resources. It was taken by the moon-worshipping cult for hundreds of years, but the Dustless Moon faction never asked for it. Why did they suddenly take it back? Don't keep me guessing, just say it." Suyu raised his brows and said unhappily. Terrifying soul fluctuations were released, shaking Oldly. He hurriedly said, "It's like this. A year ago, the secret agents of the Dustless Moon sect found a natural secret realm near where the Emperor Killer's sword had disappeared. It's a space of its own, and it's very likely that it's where the Emperor Killer's sword is hiding. For this reason, the Dustless Moon faction did not hesitate to start a war to take back this place. Their goal was to deceive people. According to what I know, a large number of the Dustless Moon faction's experts have already headed for that secret place. There was such a thing. If he had not deliberately asked around, he would not have known that the Dustless Moon faction had a hidden reason for attacking the White Dragon Mountains. If that was the case, the 1,000,000 divine stones had not been spent in vain." "The second question," Suyu said calmly. "I want to know the whereabouts of a person." Old Lee's expression softened. "Aha. Finding people is the strength of our intelligence department. As long as it is not a nameless person, we can know their whereabouts within 3 days. Where's the Saint Lady of the Moon worshipping cult?" Old Lee was surprised, and he stared at Suyu in surprise. He then said slowly, "If it was her, then there has been no news of her for the past 3 days. This is because the last time she appeared was a year ago, when she participated in the war against the Dustless Moon faction's invasion. Whereabouts, unknown. The only thing I can tell you is that the Saint Lady is not dead, but no one knows her exact whereabouts." Suyu hoped that she was dead. A trace of disappointment flashed across his eyes. But it did not matter. If he found her, he could just kill her. He did not want such a person to exist in the moon-worshipping cult. "I am ashamed that I only answered half of the question. 1,000,000 divine stones, and I can only accept half of it." Suyu waved his hand. "Forget it. You can answer my other question. Please go ahead. How many people are still alive in the White Dragon Mountains division of the moon-worshipping cult?" Old Lee was even more surprised by Suyu's identity, but he did not dare to reveal it. He said, "If it is them, it will be easy. Although the Dustless Moon faction has failed to capture them, I have found out that 8 of them are still alive. They are hiding their identities here. He took out a map and made a mark on it. At the same time, he marked the secret place that the Dustless Moon faction had discovered. All right, 1,000,000 divine stones are yours. So you put away the map, looked at the inner hall thoughtfully, and left expressionlessly. Well, he was asking the question just now. He was secretly listening to the old man's thoughts. He was not lying. The Dustless Moon faction had indeed found some clues in the White Dragon Mountains. A long time after he left, a beautiful woman in a dark green dress walked out of the inner hall. She blinked her beautiful eyes. Why did Oldly tell the truth? The more people who know about that secret place, the more competitors we will have. Elderly stared in the direction where Su Yu had disappeared, and his eyes were filled with fear. That friend's abilities are unfathomable. Although I do not have any clear evidence, I can feel that he knows what I am thinking. I am afraid that if I were to lie, he would find out immediately. So powerful? Oldly, you are the president of our division. Why would you be afraid of someone who hides his head and shows his tail? Oldly smiled faintly. He hides his head and shows his tail, not to hide himself, but to avoid scaring you and me. Huh, what kind of identity could scare you and me? Oldly said deeply. What if the moon-worshipping cult leader comes personally? Chapter 1857. Are you sure? The beautiful woman in the green dress looked solemn. Oldly nodded gently. It must be him. Only such a person can make me fear him from the bottom of my soul. The beautiful woman in the green dress frowned deeply. She knew that Oldly was a rare, soul-path strong man with the cultivation of a double-crown emperor. Since he was 80% sure, that person was most likely the Bai West sect leader himself. A trace of worry appeared on her face. If the Bai West sect leader comes in person, it will have a greater impact on us obtaining the Emperor Killer Sword. Oldly sighed. I didn't expect the Bai West sect leader to come in person. He must have come because of the disappearance of the Saint Lady. I have to tell him the truth. After a pause, Oldly's eyes flickered slightly. However, you don't have to worry too much. That secret realm is just a space cave that is suspected to be the Emperor Killer Sword. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the White Dragon Mountain Range has always been the most vulnerable place to the attacks of foreign civilizations. There have been many protracted wars, and the space is extremely unstable. There was once a large area of overlapping and compressed space secret realms, which have been discovered many times in history. It is still unknown whether the secret realm in front of us was left from the ancient times or opened up by the Emperor Killer Sword. Hearing this, the beautiful woman in the green dress looked slightly relieved. She nodded slowly. That's true. Anyway, the Dustless Moon clan is here. The competition is fierce enough. So what if there is another Bai West sect leader? Who knows? We might even be able to benefit from the fight between the Sandpiper and the Clam. After thinking this through, the beautiful woman in the green dress was in a much better mood. This matter should not be delayed. The longer we wait, the greater the possibility of the secret realm being known by more people. Let's set off as soon as possible. Oldly nodded and quietly left the intelligence department with the beautiful woman in the green dress. After Su Yu left the black market, he came to an abandoned cave according to the map. There were 7 or 8 old and weak women and children living in it. Of course, it looked so. Su Yu casually glanced at them and found that their souls were all strong and full. The youngest was a 9-year-old boy, yet he had the soul of a deity. The seemingly old man in his 60s had the soul of a peak overlord. They hid their names and lived in the cave as ordinary residents to avoid the search of the Dustless Moon clan. Grandpa Jean, why hasn't Deputy Division Leader Yang come back yet? Although the 9-year-old boy was young, his face had a maturity that didn't match his age. Grandpa Jean was the slightly older old man. He stroked his head and said, "Little Hai, don't worry. Vice Branch Leader Yang is very strong. He will quickly find enough healing medicine." Little C pouted. Since the Saintess came to save us, why didn't she bring us back to a safe place? Because the Saintess has more important things to do. She saved us and arranged for us to stay here. She has already tried her best. Grandpa Jean said kindly. His eyes were filled with worship towards moon-worshipping cult. At this moment, a woman in the cave let out a miserable groan. There was a hideous wound on his abdomen. Not only did it not heal, the flesh around the wound was rolling to the sides. Streams of divine blood continued to flow. The woman's face was already pale. Her divine blood was depleted, and it was only a matter of time before she died. Grandpa Jean and Little C hurried over, their faces filled with deep pain. Little C wiped away her tears and choked out, "Mother." Grandpa Jean also felt pity. He said hatefully, "That damn dustless moon sect. They use the Enin moon poison light to hurt people. How hateful." Little C cried, "Why hasn't Vice Branch Leader Yang returned yet? Didn't he say that he was going to find healing medicine for Mother?" Grandpa Jean sighed deeply. He was afraid that Vice Branch Leader Yang would be in great danger. Since the Dustless Moon sect used this poison to hurt people, how could they not keep an eye on healing materials? If they waited there, they would definitely be able to wait until the moon-worshipping cult members came looking for healing materials. Vice Branch Leader Yang had discussed this with him before he left. If he left this time, it was very likely that he would stay there forever. But the woman wasn't the only one injured. There were 4 other people with similar injuries that urgently needed treatment. Thus, even though he knew that it was his eyes, Vice Branch Leader Yang still chose to go. Amidst the sighs, only the miserable groans of the patients remained in the cave. At this time, a calm voice suddenly came from the cave entrance. "How about letting me take a look at your injuries?" Grandpa Jean and Little C suddenly turned around. They were surprised to see a mysterious person in a black robe standing at the entrance. Their expressions changed drastically. Now, all the members of the moon-worshipping cult's White Dragon Mountain Range division had been killed, and only the 8 of them had escaped. The newcomer was definitely not from the moon-worshipping cult. "Little C, step back," Grandpa Jean said solemnly. Grandpa Jean said solemnly. His robes fluttered, and the aura of a golden overlord was released. Suyu smiled faintly and took a step forward with his hands clasped behind his back. With just one step, Grandpa Jin's body trembled. He staggered backward, his eyes grave. A peak overlord. A look of despair appeared in his old eyes. Unless the Vice Branch Leader came back, a peak overlord could crush them all with a little finger. They were doomed. Suyu walked in without saying a word. Grandpa Jean yelled, "I'll fight you to the death." The divine energy in his body was surging, a sign that he was about to self-destruct. Suyu looked over and sighed softly. "Your loyalty is commendable." He patted Grandpa Jin's shoulder casually. All of a sudden, the divine energy in his body was strangely suppressed. His whole body was suppressed by a mighty force, unable to move. It was as if his whole body had been petrified. The child stared at Suyu with hatred. He was strong and unyielding. "Don't touch my mother." The little boy stretched out his tender arms in front of him. Suyu touched the space between his eyebrows gently. "Be careful." The little boy couldn't move at all. Only a pair of black eyes kept turning, revealing a pleading expression. Suyu walked past him and came to the woman lying on the ground. He glanced at her injuries and said calmly, "Bear with it." A ball of real dragon divine fire flew out of his fingertip and entered the wound like a tiny fire snake. "Ah!" In her coma, the woman let out a shrill scream. Her whole body could not stop trembling because of the pain. Suyu kept the divine fire and walked to the next injured person. The screams in the cave lasted for a long time. After half an incense stick of time, the cave became quiet again. Suyu walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. With a flick of his fingers, Grandpa Jean and Xiaohai regained their mobility. The 2 of them checked the injured people in panic. However, they were shocked to find that the injuries on the 5 injured people had all disappeared. Not even a scar was left. They had completely recovered as if they had never been injured. What was even more amazing was that one of the injured people was the most seriously injured. His life force had been completely devoured by the En Moon poison light. Even if they found something to heal him, he could not be saved. However, his face was rosy and his breathing was smooth. He was just unconscious. Grandpa Jean and Xiaohai were stunned by this unbelievable scene. After a long while, they came back to their senses. Grandpa Jean hesitated for a moment before bowing. Senior, may I ask who you are? Suyu is terrifyingly powerful. He could kill them in the blink of an eye. However, he had saved all of them, which meant he was not an enemy. Who I am is not important. What's important is that you answer a question of mine. So you could not find out the whereabouts of the Saint Lady from the intelligence department. He could only find out from the survivors of the branch. Grandpa Jean said respectfully, Senior, you saved our lives. Please tell us. Okay, where's the Saint Lady? Suyu asked calmly. Grandpa Jin's pupils shrank slightly, and he became vigilant. We don't know where the Saint Lady is either. He thought to himself. Before she left, the Saint Lady told us that she found out that the Dustless Moon faction was plotting something else. She never came back. Why did this person ask about the Saint Lady? He had no idea that Suyu had read his mind. Plotting something else. Did the Saint Lady also find out about the secret realm? So, she went there? If that was the case, she was most likely still alive. Oh, you can continue to wait. Someone will come to rescue you later, Suyu said calmly, then turned to leave. He would inform the nearby branches to rescue the survivors. Grandpa Jin's eyes flashed. Senior, why are you looking for the Saint Lady? Of course, it was to find her and kill her. That is none of your business, Suyu said indifferently, then walked out of the cave with his hands clasped behind his back. Just as he was about to leave, a fierce gust of wind from a palm suddenly slammed toward the top of his head. A sneak attack? In fact, he had already sensed a powerful soul hiding at the entrance of the cave. Without any hesitation, he flicked his arm lightly and deflected the incoming palm attack. Bang! A black-robed figure hit the stone wall and rolled on the spot, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Grandpa Jean and Xiaohai heard the commotion and immediately walked over. When they saw who it was, they exclaimed in surprise, Deputy Division Leader Yang. They hurriedly helped him up. He was Deputy Division Leader Yang, who had found the healing medicine. Old Jean, who is he? Are you all right? When he had returned, he had discovered a mysterious black-robed figure entering the cave and attacking Old Jean and Xiaohai. He had kept his cool and hidden at the entrance of the cave, preparing to launch a sneak attack. He had not expected the other party to be so powerful, and he had not expected Old Jean and Xiaohai to be fine. Deputy Division Leader Yang, don't misunderstand. He has no ill intentions. He saved everyone. Grandpa Jean hurriedly explained, afraid that Deputy Division Leader Yang would attack again. Deputy Division Leader Yang was stunned. He looked around the cave and found that everyone was alive, and their injuries had all recovered. He could not help but smile bitterly. He shook off the dust on his body and cupped his fist toward Suyu. Thank you for saving our lives, brother. Unexpectedly, Suyu looked at him without blinking. When Suyu had slapped him to the ground, the robe on his body had been torn to shreds, revealing his true appearance hidden beneath the black robe. Deputy Division Leader Yang was not surprised at all. He smiled. As you can see, I am not from the Dark Moon clan, but a human. A human from a third-rate clan. Deputy Division Leader Yang was not the least bit afraid of his identity as a human. There was a hint of helplessness in his words. The status of humans in the great beginning realm was too low, and he was used to being looked at differently. Suyu stared at him and asked, May I ask where you are from? Deputy Division Leader Yang looked at Suyu strangely and said, I am from a very distant place. Is it another civilization? Suyu asked tentatively. Deputy Division Leader Yang's eyes flashed as he said, You could say so. Anyway, it is extremely far away, and the inter-civilization formation cannot transport us there. Chapter 1858. Yang Tai. He couldn't believe his eyes. How could they meet on such an occasion? He was Yang Tai, the son of the all-access merchant god of the Great Eastern Alliance. Later, the Dakini reformed and killed innocent people. Yang Tai and Sheng Yuanxin were forced to leave the Great Beginning Realm through an entrance of the Tao Tai's cage. They came to the Great Beginning Realm several years earlier than Suyu. He had thought that they would never meet again in this lifetime, given how vast the Great Beginning Realm was. Who would have thought that they would meet here? Hey, brother, do you know me? Deputy Leader Yang asked curiously when he noticed Su Yu was staring at him from under the black robe. Su Yu shook his head and said, "No, I don't know you. Now is not the time to recognize him." Once his identity was exposed, he would be hunted down by the moon-worshipping cult. When the situation stabilized, he would recognize him. "However, you look like a friend of mine," Su Yu said, half-truthfully. Yang Tai said with a self-deprecating smile, "If I had a friend like you, I wouldn't be in such a difficult situation." After a pause, he cupped his fist again and said, "Brother, please come inside and talk to us. We owe you a great favor for your help." Su Yu waved his hand and said, "It's nothing." However, he also gave up the idea of leaving immediately. Instead, he went inside and stayed. If it was an ordinary member of the division, he could just send someone to rescue him. However, since it was Yang Tai, he had nothing to say. The four of them arranged a simple banquet in the cave and drank with each other. Yang Tai expressed his gratitude to Su Yu again and again. "Alas, without your help, even if we didn't die, only the three of us would be left. We would be too ashamed to meet the preaching elder in charge of this area," Yang Tai said shamefully. Xiao Hai's condition gradually improved, and he became more lively. There are also the guardian elder and the sect leader. Yang Tai rolled his eyes at him. "With my identity, I can't even meet the guardian elder, let alone the sect leader. Of course, our sect leader is a heavenly figure. He can decide the life and death of billions of people with a single thought. He can kill the divine warrior of the heaven and earth with a single look. He is so powerful," Xiao Hai said with admiration. At the mention of the reverence Moon Sect Master, Yang Tai's face was filled with reverence. He was just a deputy branch leader among the countless branches of the moon-worshipping cult. His status was so low that even meeting the guardian elders was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Meeting the cult leader was something he didn't even dare to think about. As the three of them chatted, Yang Tai glanced at the others whose condition was improving and said, "They should be able to wake up in a few hours. At that time, let's do it as soon as possible. This place might not be safe anymore." Grandpa Jean and Little Hai didn't have any objections. In the past year, they had changed positions several times. This was the 8th one. Staying in any place for more than a month would become dangerous. Yang Tai pondered deeply for a moment before he said, "Brother, I'm unable to repay you for saving my life. But after this meal, you should leave as soon as possible. Don't be mistaken for the moon-worshipping cult and be pursued by the dustless moon sect." Su Yu laughed indifferently. "My abilities are still passable. I probably don't care about the pursuit of ordinary members of the dustless moon faction." Yang Tai smiled embarrassedly. His opponent's strength really wasn't bad. His surprise attack had failed, and he'd been easily beaten to the point of being covered in dirt instead. "Brother, what is your strength? Why can't I see through it?" Yang Tai asked directly. So you didn't avoid the topic. He said, "My cultivation is the same as yours. We're both peak overlords. The reason why I can't see through it is that the material of my black robe is a little special." Yang Tai laughed heartily. "It turned out your cultivation is the same as mine." He didn't think Su Yu was lying. After all, above the peak overlords were half-step emperors or even heaven and earth divine warriors. He didn't think such a strong man would befriend him. "I see. But brother, your medical skills are really brilliant. The Een Moon poison light of the dustless moon faction is extremely poisonous. It can't be cured by divine power. Instead, it will worsen the injury. Only special medicine can cure it," Yang Tai exclaimed. Su Yu shook his head and said, "It's just a small divine technique. It's not a big deal." Upon hearing this, old Jean said in surprise, "By the way, Deputy Leader Yang, why did you come back so early? Didn't you get the medicine?" According to old Jin's estimation, Yang Tai would probably go through a fierce battle and wouldn't come back until tomorrow. He didn't expect that he would come back now. Yang Tai raised his eyebrows and shook his head. "On the contrary, I got the medicine, and it was very easy." Old Jin's face changed. He was experienced and knowledgeable, so he said seriously, "This is bad. I'm afraid this is also a trap. The Dustless Moon faction tried so hard to catch us. How could they not have prepared such an important medicine?" Yang Tai shook his head and said, "No, I checked the medicine, and there's no trace of tampering on it. Old Jean frowned, still feeling uneasy. Then, did anyone follow you? Yangtai was very confident about this. Did you forget that I have an earth spiritual body, and I'm good at escaping through the earth? Who would catch up with me? After thinking for a while, old Jin's knitted eyebrows relaxed a little. Indeed, Deputy Leader Yang's escaping technique was very powerful. On the day when the division was besieged, the division leader and the other 3 deputy leaders were killed. Only Deputy Leader Yang escaped from the heavy siege, which showed that his escaping technique was really excellent. Maybe I'm overthinking, old Jean said, relieved. Su Yu's eyes flashed slightly, and he said softly, I'm afraid you're not overthinking. Someone did follow Deputy Leader Yang. Yang Tai raised his eyebrows. Why do you say that? Su Yu sat on the stone bench, motionless. He said, I was wondering just now. There were a few strong souls wandering around here. I thought they were just passers-by. Now, after hearing what you said, I'm afraid they must have followed us here. If he was from the Dustless Moon faction, he wouldn't have attacked Yang Tai. Instead, he would have followed him secretly and killed him in one fell swoop. That was much more valuable than killing Yang Tai alone. What? Yang Tai was shocked. Impossible. How could ordinary people follow me? Su Yu said calmly. Compared to you, they're not ordinary people. Among those souls, there is a very powerful one at the level of the divine warrior of heaven and earth. Suddenly, the cave fell into a dead silence. Divine warrior of heaven and earth. Yang Tai gasped, his mind blank. He came from the Eastern Divine region, so he knew how powerful the divine warriors of heaven and earth were. In the moon-worshipping sect, he had witnessed the terror of the divine warrior of heaven and earth with a casual strike of the divine warrior of heaven and earth. In front of that power of heaven and earth, the peak overlords were as small as ants. In the Dustless Moon faction, the divine warriors of heaven and earth were very rare. They were like the divine warriors of heaven and earth. He would not show himself easily, just like a mysterious dragon whose tail was nowhere to be seen. He never dreamed that the Dustless Moon faction would send a divine warrior of heaven and earth to kill a few of them. Brother, how dare you come here? You know, the divine warriors of heaven and earth are very busy, so they don't bother to attack us personally. Yang Tai swallowed hard, suppressed his fear, and asked Su Yu. Su Yu took a sip of wine and said leisurely, He is here. What? Yang Tai, Lao Jin, and Xiao Hai all stood up. After waiting for a while, there was no movement. They couldn't help but look at Su Yu in surprise. Yang Tai said with a smile, Brother, don't tell me you are making fun of us. Before he could finish his words, the top of the cave trembled violently. An extremely powerful force penetrated through and created a hole in the cave with a diameter of 100 feet. A middle-aged man in a white moon robe was walking leisurely with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were full of indifference. He glanced at the situation in the cave casually, as if he was looking at ants. 9 people, well, one more than the information we got. Consider it a gift. Yang Tai, Lao Jin, and Xiao Hai felt like they had been electrocuted. Their bodies became stiff, and they couldn't move at all. They couldn't even move a finger, let alone resist. This was the power of a divine warrior of heaven and earth. One look and one thought from him could determine their life and death. The middle-aged man in the robe said indifferently, Break one of your arms and one of your legs, and I will spare your lives. What? Yang Tai and the others were shocked. In the past, they killed the moon-worshipping followers on the spot without hesitation. Why did he spare their lives now? They didn't want to die if they could. Yang Tai and Lao Jin looked at each other and hesitated. The divine warrior of heaven and earth in front of them could kill them easily. Since he asked them to break their arms and legs, he must spare their lives. I don't have time to waste on ants like you. Forget it. I will send you to your death. The middle-aged man in the moon robe was ready to attack. Yang Tai and Lao Jin's faces changed dramatically. Without any hesitation, they cut off one of their legs first. Compared to death, they could still be saved. Both of them were decisive people. Since they had made up their minds, they would not hesitate. They gathered their divine power and cut off their left legs. However, at this moment, Suyu, who was sitting still, gently tapped the stone table with his fingertips. The wine that had spilled on the table just now bounced up and flew towards the arms of the two people. Pow! The wine droplets bounced off their palms accurately. Yang Tai turned pale with fright from the pain and said, "Brother, have you gone mad?" The divine warrior of heaven and earth in front of them was full of killing intent. Only by obeying him could they avoid death. So you dare to stop them? Wasn't he provoking the divine warrior of heaven and earth? Sure enough, the other party frowned slightly, and his patience reached its limit. Humph, you are just a group of ants. Why do I need you? Go to hell. Yang Tai was shocked and said hurriedly, "Divine warrior, please show mercy. We will cut off our arms and legs right now." "No need. My patience is exhausted." The body of the middle-aged man in the moon robe erupted with endless power and swept over. Instantly, everyone was shrouded in the shadow of death. Yang Tai's face was full of despair and a bitter smile. He could have survived, but because of Su Yu's attack, his last hope was extinguished. A flash of resentment flashed in his heart, but it faded away immediately. The other party was just being kind. He had nothing to complain about. Shouldn't the dustless Moon Clan be the one to complain about? With a bitter smile, the power of desolation descended. They closed their eyes and welcomed the pain that was coming. However, the pain that they had imagined did not appear. Yang Tai opened his eyes to take a look, and he stood dumbfounded on the spot. Chapter 1859. Several faintly discernible threads could be vaguely seen on his palm, weaving into a net-like shape that sliced and pulverized the desolate force that was attacking him. Only then was he able to block the terrifying power of desolation. Yang Tai and Old Jean were stunned, and so was the middle-aged man in the moon robe. He did not expect that someone among the small fries of the moon-worshipping cult could block his attack. After a while, the middle-aged man in the moon robe looked surprised and commented lightly, "Not bad. You have a treasure and can block a blow from the divine warrior of heaven and earth." The moon-worshipping cult is not full of good-for-nothings. With his hands behind his back, he looked at Su Yu with slight interest and said, "The rest of you will die. Break one of your arms and one of your legs, then come with me." After a pause, he added casually, "I can only tolerate you for 3 breaths. After 3 breaths, I will do it myself." Yang Tai and the others were still as pale as paper. Their hearts were full of despair. The 8 of them were doomed. Only then could Su Yu survive. But Su Yu said leisurely, "Can you give me some face and let the 8 of them go? Let's each take a step back. It will benefit everyone. What do you think?" Hearing Su Yu pleading for them, Yang Tai felt grateful and amused. Yang Tai was grateful and amused at the same time. This brother of his had good intentions, but he was too immature. His life was in the hands of the divine warrior of heaven and earth. How could he plead for mercy? Sure enough, the middle-aged man in the moon robe said calmly, "1 breath." Su Yu sat on the stone bench in silence, waiting for the other party's reply. 2 breaths. Only the passing time answered him. Yang Tai bowed respectfully and said quickly, "Brother, don't worry about us anymore. You have done so much for us, and we are very grateful. We can't get you into trouble." He tried to persuade him quickly. The middle-aged man in the moon robe said indifferently without any hesitation, 3 breaths. His eyes were slightly cold. "I have to do it myself." He took a big step forward, and a huge pressure unique to the divine warriors shrouded them. Plop! Yang Tai, Old Jean, and Xiao Hai suddenly felt as if thousands of mountains were pressing down on them. Their knees went soft, and they fell to the ground, unable to get up. However, only Su Yu sat on the stone bench motionlessly, as if he was not affected at all. "Oh, you do have some skills, but in front of the martial emperor, any resistance is pathetic and ignorant." The moon-robed, middle-aged man walked up to Su Yu with his hands clasped behind his back. His palm was filled with the power of desolation, and he patted Su Yu's shoulder. A casual slap was enough to kill a half-step martial monarch. However, under his control, this palm strike would only cut off his entire arm. However, right at that moment, Suyu, who had not moved an inch, raised his eyes. Why are there always so many people who don't know when to stop? I wanted to spare your life, but you insisted on leaving your head behind. Without waiting for the moon-robed middle-aged man to understand the deeper meaning of his words, Suyu gently flicked his finger. The ball of silk thread spiraling in his palm shot out abruptly, streaking across the moon-robed middle-aged man's arm. The moon-robed middle-aged man was shocked. So fast, by the time he reacted, the thread had already pierced through his arm. He was shocked, but upon closer inspection, there was nothing wrong with his arm. What the hell are you doing? The moon-robed middle-aged man's arm pressed down again. At this moment, his arm was silently separated from his shoulder and fell to the ground. A smooth, mirror-like incision appeared at the junction of the arm and shoulder. The divine blood flowed out along the old blood vessels without anyone noticing. Only then did a tingling sensation gradually spread. The moon-robed, middle-aged man looked at his shoulder. His eyes were dull for a moment, as if he could not believe it. How hard was the body of a divine warrior of heaven and earth? An ordinary emperor-level divine weapon would not even be able to harm a single hair on his body. It was not until the tingling turned into intense agony that the moon-robed, middle-aged man roared. His body retreated frantically, staring at the silk thread in Suyu's palm in horror. Damn it, what is that thing? Suyu slowly stood up and said indifferently, You don't understand what kind of existence you are talking to. He gently closed his eyes, and the 5 silk threads danced like flying dragons. The sound of hissing reverberated in the cave. Soon, it was quiet as usual. Under the illumination of the dim candlelight, a horrifying projection appeared on the wall. A one-armed figure, with its head and remaining 3 limbs flying off at the same time. A divine warrior of a generation had perished here without knowing why. His soul was also annihilated in an instant, leaving not a single trace behind. Suyu's face was indifferent. With a light tap of his toes, he leaped out of the gap above his head. In the dark night, a few faint sounds of hissing could be heard, and then there was no more sound. Yangtai and old Jean were so shocked that they did not dare to move. They stared at the corpse of the divine warrior of heaven and earth in a daze, feeling as if they were in a dream. The divine warrior of heaven and earth had been annihilated in an instant. This was something that they could never imagine in their entire lives. Who was that mysterious brother? How powerful was he? Swish! While they were pondering, Suyu appeared out of thin air and gently sat down on the stone bench. Beside him stood a man who was trembling all over. When Yangtai saw this man, his face changed dramatically. He said in a trembling voice, The Dustless Moon Faction's White Dragon Mountain Cave Master, Li Kai. When old Jean saw this man, his eyes shrank. Out of fear, his old body subconsciously trembled. The Dustless Moon Faction's Cave Master was equivalent to the Baiwe Sect Master's branch leader. A year ago, it was Li Kai who suddenly led a large number of strong men to besiege the branch and carried out a bloody purge. In the past year, it was also Li Kai who ordered people to hunt down the remaining members of the branch. Yangtai and the other 7 people hated and feared him. But now, Li Kai was covered in blood and trembling as he stood beside Suyu. He looked at Suyu with extreme fear in his eyes. His pupils shrank to the size of needles, as if he had experienced a huge shock and was on the verge of a mental breakdown. What is the purpose of maiming people and leaving them alive? Suyu poured himself a cup of wine, not even looking at Li Kai, who was half a step away from the divine warrior behind him. But Li Kai was terrified. Without the slightest hesitation, he said in a trembling voice, reporting to Senior, the secret realm ahead is dangerous, and we need someone to lead the way and sound out the danger. Secret realm? Was it the secret realm that the Dustless Moon faction was excavating? It seemed that the secret realm was extremely dangerous. It was like there were hidden prohibitions or traps, and they had no choice but to capture people as cannon fodder. No wonder there were divine warriors who personally captured Yangtai and the others, and even spared their lives. Hearing that, Suyu's brows relaxed. It seemed that although the Dustless Moon faction had discovered the secret realm a year ago, they had not been able to enter it. If the Emperor Killing Sword was really inside, they probably had not obtained it yet. This was a good piece of news. Where is this secret realm? Suyu asked again. Li Kai told him everything and took out a map with the exact location marked on it. It was exactly the same as the one old man Li had given him. The location is correct, Suyu confirmed. With a casual lift of his hand, a silk thread instantly pierced through Li Kai's head, causing him to die painlessly on the spot. Looking at the moon-robed, middle-aged man's corpse, Suyu's eyes were cold. He had not wanted to kill indiscriminately. After all, he had no enmity with the Dustless Moon faction. However, the other party did not know what was good for him. Forget it. I will personally escort you out of White Dragon City, Suyu said calmly. He waved his hand casually, and the enormous space power pulled all 5 unconscious people in front of him. This move made Yang Tai and the other's hair stand on end. You come here too, Suyu said calmly. Yang Tai and Old Man Jean did not dare to object. They immediately trotted over, but stood 2 feet away from Suyu respectfully, not daring to get too close. Xiao Hai, however, was fearless. He stared at the space storage device on the moon-robed, middle-aged man's right arm. That, Senior, do you not want it? Suyu looked at it indifferently and shook his head. He no longer cared about the storage ring of the single-crowned divine warrior. Then, can I take it? Xiao Hai asked worriedly. Suyu's eyes flashed with a red light, and the space ring fell into his palm. He wiped the essence blood from the ring with a gentle touch of his finger, then threw it to Xiao Hai. Thank you, Senior. Thank you, Senior. Xiao Hai was overjoyed. Yang Tai and Old Man Jean swallowed hard. They had seen the space ring, but they did not have the guts to ask for it. In the end, Xiao Hai had taken advantage of it. Not only that, but the Senior had also helped him wipe the remaining essence blood from the ring. That was the essence blood of the divine warrior of the world, which contained unimaginable power. It would take them at least a few years to remove the essence blood from the ring. At this moment, their eyes were red with jealousy. Suyu saw this and then took out several space storage devices. They were all space rings that he had found when the Dayu Empire destroyed the missionary elder of the moon-worshipping cult. There was no time to open them one by one, so he kept them. Everyone has a share, Suyu said as he gave them 4 pills. Old Man Jean had 1, but Yang Tai had 3. Yang Tai was flattered. Senior, in terms of time, Elder Jean had met this senior before him. Why did Old Man Jean have 1, but he had 3? Protecting the followers, your courage is commendable. This is a reward for you. After saying that, he immediately activated the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole and disappeared from the cave in an instant. When he reappeared, he appeared directly in the sphere of influence of another branch of the moon-worshipping cult. He said, "That's all for you. We will meet again if fate allows it." Yang Tai said hurriedly, "May I know your name, Senior?" Suyu paused for a moment and said lightly, "My surname is Su." After saying that, he disappeared completely. Yang Tai was startled. Su? The first thing that came into his mind was Su Yu, who came from the Jojo Cavern world in the Eastern Divine region. He was an incredible peer who created miracles everywhere. What a coincidence. Senior, your surname is also Su? Yang Tai murmured. He didn't connect the two at all. After all, Suyu was still trapped in the Tao Tai cage and could never get out of it. Secondly, how could Suyu achieve his current strength? Thinking of Suyu, Yang Tai was disappointed. Brother Su, the vastness of the world is beyond our imagination. Maybe you can't imagine that there is a wider absolute beginning world outside the God realm. And what you can't imagine is that I, who is as humble as dust in front of you, also have the strength of a peak overlord. If I were in the God realm, such strength would be enough to unify the whole God realm, right? He imagined Suyu's expression when he returned to the God realm one day. Suyu must be surprised, shocked, and regretful. Yang Tai revealed a knowing smile as he imagined himself surpassing Suyu, who he had to look up to in the past. Brother Su, I'm really looking forward to our next meeting. How will you face me at that time? Chapter 1860. With a flip of his hand, he grabbed a peak-tier, overlord-class flying beast from the Nine Jade Spiritual Pearl. It was the mount of the moon-robed, middle-aged man, and it was extremely fast. Under his threat, the ferocious bird obediently crouched on Su Yu's back and flew toward the secret realm. According to the location of the secret realm, it would take about 10 more days to reach it. With enough time, Su Yu closed his eyes and started to recover his divine power while cultivating. He tried to enter the Taishu cave, but was still refused entry. He had not digested the enlightenment from last time. The requirements are really strict, Su Yu muttered to himself. However, he was also inspired by it. It was useless to comprehend the rules but not be able to digest them. The Taishu master claimed to be the master of the soul rules. With such strict requirements, it must be a major disadvantage to comprehend but not digest it. Therefore, he was not allowed to enter the Taishu cave until he had completely digested it. As for Su Yu, he had comprehended the space rules long ago but had not completely digested it. To be precise, he had only learned the space blade. There was no other use for it. The soul rules, the space rules, and the life rules must all go hand in hand. Su Yu thought to himself as he entered the state of time acceleration and began to carefully comprehend the 3 rules. Time passed by in a flash. A huge ferocious bird flew through the sky. The martial artist on the ground could vaguely see a figure shrouded in 3 colors sitting on the bird. His entire body exuded a mysterious and extraordinary supreme concept. The fluctuations of the soul, space, and life were extremely strong. Chirp! 10 days later, the ferocious bird let out a long cry, waking Su Yu from his deep meditation. He slowly opened his eyes, and they were filled with traces of satisfaction. Not bad. After digesting the enlightenment, my understanding of the 3 rules has indeed deepened, Su Yu said to himself. After 10 days of digestion, he had comprehended some of the wonderful uses of the rules from each of the 3 rules. Although they might not be powerful, they could play an unexpected role. Hearing the bird's long cry, he knew that the bird had arrived at its destination. As far as the eye could see, this place was the tail of the White Dragon Mountains, shaped like a giant dragon's tail. On the other side of the White Dragon Mountains was the famous White Sea of the Dark Star Civilization. In contrast to the pitch-black environment of the Dark Star Civilization, the White Sea was as bright as day all year round. It emitted intense, dazzling white light, illuminating 1/10 of the Dark Star Civilization. It was said that the formation of the White Sea was a battlefield left behind by the invasion of the Dark Star Civilization. The remnant powerful aura shattered the once dense light of the Black Moon, causing this place to become as bright as day. To the members of the Dark Moon race, who cultivated by absorbing the Black Moon divine light, this place was the most barren and harshest place. The members of the Dark Moon race with the lowest cultivation did not like to live near the White Sea. Therefore, very few Dark Moon clansmen would appear in this place. However, in the past year, large numbers of people from the Dustless Moon sect had arrived. They forced batches of moon worshippers from all directions and entered the White Sea along the tail of the White Dragon Mountains. It had been like this for more than half a year without stopping. No one knew why they forced the moon worshippers into the White Sea, but none of the moon worshippers who went in ever returned. Su Yu stood in the vast ocean, overlooking the Dustless Moon faction. The moon-worshipping disciples were being held captive in an endless stream. Like ants moving house, they continued to enter the White Sea. It was obvious that the place they were heading to was the so-called secret realm. Moreover, the Dustless Moon sect had mobilized a great number of people this time. With the senses of Su Yu's soul, he clearly discovered that there were 6 souls of the Double Crown Emperor and 50 souls of the Single Crown Emperor. There was even a soul that he was afraid of among them. Master Bao Kuan, the faction master of the Dustless Moon sect. He had actually come in person. Even if this secret realm did not contain the Emperor Killing Sword, it was still an extremely shocking treasure. Otherwise, the Dustless Moon sect would not have risked a war between the 2 great influences to send troops to seize this place, and Master Bao Kuan would not have come in person. Regardless of whether there is the Emperor Killing Sword or not, This secret realm is worth exploring. Suyu's eyes narrowed slightly. A secret realm that could tempt the Triple Crown Emperor was definitely not ordinary. After pondering for a moment, Suyu descended alone. He had no intention of activating the power of the moon-worshipping sect. Now, the moon-worshipping sect only had 6 guardian elders. If anything happened to them in the secret realm, the weakness of the moon-worshipping sect would soon be exposed. The truth of the Diu Empire would also be exposed. With a thought, he landed in front of a small hill and stared at the large number of moon-worshipping disciples who were being forced to go. With his strength, it would not be a problem for him to force his way into the secret realm. The problem was Master Bao Kuan. If he found out, it would be a huge problem. Now, he only had the soul of a Triple Crown Emperor, and his cultivation was far from that level. Even with the help of Dongfang Xia's dragon-shaped necklace, he could only attack and defend himself. He could not confront Master Bao Kuan head-on. Therefore, he had no choice but to use other methods to sneak into the secret realm. Glancing at the crowded moon-worshipping disciples who were being held captive by the 2 bronze overlords of the Dustless Moon sect, Suyu had a thought. He took off the black robe made of extremely black dust and changed into a simple, shabby robe. His robe was stained with blood. No matter how one looked at it, he looked like a wounded disciple who had been arrested. As for his face, he used the face of a human. The moon-worshipping sect accepted disciples regardless of race. It was common to see human disciples, so it was not strange at all. His whole body was surging with yin and yang energy, and the next moment, he appeared in the crowd of captives. The already crowded crowd suddenly squeezed together, but no one noticed, including the 2 dustless moon sect disciples. Under their pressure, the crowd entered the White Sea. The warm water of the White Sea quickly surged over, enveloping the crowd. Visible to the naked eye, there were 6 giant, funnel-shaped vortexes on the seabed. It was unknown where the other end of the vortexes led to, but they released a shocking suction force, engulfing the sand and seawater nearby. In front of the 6 vortexes, there were countless captives like Suyu. There were about 1 million of them. They were divided into groups of 10 people, and they entered different vortexes. Anyone who resisted would be killed without mercy in front of everyone. Suyu was in the crowd, silent. As group after group was thrown into different vortexes, the crowd he was in gradually moved to the front. A strong martial artist from the Dustless Moon sect, who was half a step into the martial emperor realm, was holding a long, burning whip. Listen up, all of you. You are moon-worshipping disciples, and you should have died. But Master Bao Kuan is merciful and has decided to give you a chance. Everyone, divide into groups of 10 and choose a vortex to enter. If you make it to the end alive, you will be rewarded with a noble status in the Dustless Moon sect and endless resources. Do you understand? Of course they did not understand. They had been caught and thrown into the vortexes for no reason, and who knew what was inside? Understood, but who dared to say they did not understand? If you understand, then hold on to the communication jade. He waved his hand, and the dozens of Dustless Moon sect disciples behind him handed out the communication jade, ensuring that everyone got one. Under his command, everyone lined up 10 people to a group. Suyu was in the inconspicuous group number 6, and he was about to enter the 6th vortex. Our luck is not bad. The group that is about to succeed is the 6th. Beside Suyu, a dark-skinned, middle-aged man grinned, secretly rejoicing. Suyu cast a surprised look at him. Were there any differences in the situation of the 6 vortexes? Feeling Suyu's gaze, the middle-aged man lowered his voice and said, "Kid, our luck is not bad. Follow me, and I will ensure your safety." Suyu laughed lightly. "Big brother, are you very clear about the situation inside the vortexes?" Hee hee. The dark-skinned man licked his lips. "To tell you the truth, I was caught by a Dustless Moon sect cave master of half martial artist. Along the way, I eavesdropped on him talking to other disciples about the situation of the secret realm." Suyu glanced at his ears and found that they were slender and long, showing signs of having been trained. It seemed that he had special hearing, and that was why he could eavesdrop on the conversations of half martial artists. At this moment, The dark-skinned man seemed to be showing off proudly, but he did not know that his inner thoughts were clearly heard by Suyu's ears. The vortexes are very dangerous. I have to win over this foolish human kid and let him be at the bottom of the line when the danger comes. On the surface, the dark-skinned man wore a hearty expression. He patted Suyu's shoulder and said mysteriously, "Let me tell you, all 6 vortexes lead to the secret realm, but each vortex has very powerful seals and traps. At first, the people of the Dustless Moon sect went there personally, but in the end, 2 great deacons of the double-crowned divine warriors died, and dozens of hall masters of the single-crowned divine warriors died. That's why they are capturing people and using human lives to fill the path. Among them, the 6th vortex is the vortex where the 2 great deacons died. Before they died, they opened up a long path, so this vortex is the fastest. Look, there's still so many people in front of us. Maybe by the time we enter, we will have reached the end by stepping on the corpses of our predecessors." Hearing this, Suyu's eyes flickered with a cold light. Using human lives to fill the path. What a virtuous Lord Bao Kuan. He finally understood why Lord Bao Kuan would invite the moon-worshipping sect master to search for the Emperor Killing Sword. It was probably because the entrance to the secret realm was too dangerous. Therefore, he wanted to invite the moon-worshipping sect master to explore it together to reduce the sacrifices of the Dustless Moon sect. Unfortunately, Suyu had unexpectedly refused. Lord Bao Kuan had no choice but to use the lives of ordinary disciples to fill the path. This man's cruelty was evident. "Hurry up, follow me." The half-king realm master of the Dustless Moon sect urged them with a fiery whip in his hand. It was their turn to enter the 6th vortex. Suyu followed him quietly, ready to step into the vortex with the other members of the group. However, at this moment, a gentle order floated over. "Lord Bao Kuan needs some helpers. Get some people over here." This person was no stranger to Suyu. It was the messenger that Lord Bao Kuan had sent to the moon-worshipping sect. He was Lord Bao Kuan's 3rd disciple, the Black Lotus demonic lord. The cave master humbly agreed, then turned and swept his long whip, stopping Suyu's group, who were about to enter the vortex. "Your group, as well as the 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st groups, follow the Black Lotus demonic lord to meet the faction master." The cave master shouted. Suyu's heart sank. His disguise might not be able to hold up in front of Lord Bao Kuan. Chapter 1861. Compared to him, the rest of the people were secretly elated. If that was the case, they would not have to risk their lives by entering the vortex. Our luck is not bad," the tan man said with a low laugh. Even though the 6th vortex was about to be explored, how could it be safer than working for Lord Bao Kuan? "We don't need so many people. Just 3 groups will do," the Black Lotus demon lord said calmly. The cave master nodded, his cold gaze sweeping across the area as he called out 3 groups. "Groups 1, 2, 3, come over. Groups 4, 5, 6 will take over the positions of the first 3. Hearing this, the 30 members of Groups 1, 2, and 3 were overjoyed, immediately running over. The remaining Groups 4, 5, and 6 were whipped by the Dustless Moon faction disciples to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd vortexes. Suyu and the rest, who were supposed to be in the 6th group, were now standing in front of the 3rd vortex. The tan man's face was as pale as a sheet, his lips trembling in fear. The 3rd group, the group of death. He had eavesdropped on a conversation of the half-martial artist disciple that the 3rd group had the slowest progress. This was because the traps in the 3rd group were large, but not sparse. No matter how many people entered, no one could escape the traps. All of them died within, and very few were able to break the traps. So far, the 2nd whirlpool, which was second to last, had 30% progress. But the 3rd group had not even made 10% progress. They would definitely die if they entered. "We are doomed. We are completely doomed." The tan man's eyes were blank, filled with despair. Suyu, on the other hand, looked relaxed. The dangers of the traps were manageable, but Lord Bao Kuan was even more troublesome. "Why are you stopping? Go in immediately. The people of the Dustless Moon faction behind them held long whips, forcing them to walk in. The others who had been captured did not know that the traps in the vortex were waiting for their deaths. Even though they were uneasy, in order to survive, they reluctantly obeyed the Dustless Moon faction and entered the vortex. Suyu did not say a word, his expression calm as he walked toward the vortex. But at this moment, the eyes of the tan man beside him flashed with determination. He raised his voice and roared, "Brothers, don't be fooled. There are traps in the vortex that will definitely kill us. Millions of people have already died before us. The Dustless Moon faction wants to use our corpses to fill up the traps. Everyone run." He used all the divine power in his body and roared loudly, transmitting his voice to all areas. There were millions of captives gathered together. There were less than 10,000 Dustless Moon sect disciples guarding them. A single spark can start a prairie fire. After the seed of fear was sown, it immediately began to spread in all directions. There was a huge uproar among the millions of people. The expressions of the Dustless Moon sect disciples changed as they searched for the source of the sound. However, someone as cunning as the dark-skinned man hid in the crowd after letting out a loud shout. He didn't say a word and quietly observed the situation. In fact, he could have exposed the truth from the very beginning and created the current chaos to escape. However, he didn't do that. That was because he knew that even if the enemy only had 10,000 people, not many of them would be able to escape. He had no other choice. But the effect was very good. The living beings that had been forced to come from thousands of miles away were already feeling nervous. Now that they knew that there was a trap, who could remain calm? Run! There was no need for the dark-skinned man to shout. Someone else shouted in panic. Then, instigating shouts could be heard everywhere. The millions of people were in an uproar. Like a group of scattered ants, they fled in all directions. Some fled back to the mainland, some fled to the deep sea, and some fled to the camp where Master Baocoan was. The Dustless Moon sect disciples kept shouting, but to no avail. Their voices were drowned out by the huge uproar. In their anger, they had no choice but to kill. Their strength was far greater than that of the ordinary disciples, and a casual attack could kill a large number of people. The dark-skinned man took advantage of the chaos to escape. Suyu looked at him calmly. If he wasn't mistaken, there was a heaven and earth divine warrior overseeing the place where the dark-skinned man had fled. He would definitely die if he went there. Suyu looked away and didn't intend to warn him. He turned around and took advantage of the chaos to enter the sixth vortex. As soon as he entered, the pungent smell of blood assaulted his nostrils. It was nauseating. What was slightly strange was that the horrible scene of broken limbs and broken bones that he had imagined didn't appear. Apart from the lingering smell of blood, there were no corpses. Moreover, the seals and traps that had been destroyed could be seen everywhere. In front of him was a straight and deep tunnel. Suyu moved forward quickly without hesitation. After half an hour, he encountered countless destroyed traps and seals along the way. Only then did he arrive at a place where the smell of blood was faint. It seems like their exploration has come to an end here. Suyu's eyes flickered. With a flick of his finger, a whiff of divine energy flew out and shot toward the seemingly empty tunnel in front of him. Poof! All of a sudden, a giant net made of densely packed blood-red light appeared in front of him. It was the size of the entire tunnel, and it blocked the entire tunnel. The hole in the net was very small, only the size of a palm. It was impossible to escape by bypassing the net. Are the traps so simple? Suyu didn't let his guard down. If it were so easy, it wouldn't have been so easy to explore. All of a sudden, the net of blood-red light changed slightly. Suyu raised his brows slightly, and without saying a word, he immediately took a few steps back. Right at that moment, the giant blood-red net suddenly pounced towards Suyu like a flash of lightning. All the people and objects in the entire tunnel were within the range of the giant net. There was no possibility of escaping. Creak! Suyu was not in a hurry. The silk on his wrist flew out like a dancing snake, twisting a huge hole in the net. Only then could he enter calmly. However, As soon as the red net was twisted, a new one slowly grew in its place. Suyu took advantage of the fact that the red net had not fully formed and immediately slipped through. As soon as his feet landed on the ground, holes suddenly appeared all around the tunnel, and a large amount of poisonous fog sprayed out from them. Suyu tried his best to keep the traps intact and did not destroy them. He merely condensed a layer of real dragon divine fire in front of him to evaporate all the poisonous fog that came close. Then he took another step forward. 2 golden puppets walked out from the depths of the tunnel. They were made of unknown materials, and they exuded a very powerful aura. The 2 puppets immediately pounced towards Suyu. He flicked the silk and cut the puppet's body. However, it only managed to cut through half of the puppet's body. Suyu was secretly surprised. Even with the sharpness of the silk, it couldn't cut through it. Bang! At the same time, the fist of the puppet on the right arrived first. Suyu dodged it, and the fist bombarded the stone wall. The whole stone wall shook violently, leaving a long crack. This attack was no weaker than the attack of a top-notch double-crown divine warrior. As soon as his attack landed, another puppet attacked. The narrow environment was not conducive to long-range combat. Evil Dragon Bible, Suyu shouted, transforming into a 1,000-foot-long giant dragon. The giant dragon claw slammed forward, barely blocking the attack of the other puppet. However, the first puppet reacted, growling and pouncing towards Suyu. Suyu opened his mouth and spat out a huge wave of flames, burning the 2 puppets on the spot. No matter how hard their materials were, could they be as hard as the body of the evil dragon lord? As the flames burned, the bodies of the 2 puppets immediately showed signs of melting, and their movements became slower. Suyu transformed into his human form, calmly passing through the space between the 2. However, he had not gone far before the walls of the tunnel were filled with a corrosive liquid that was as black as ink. It was not only underground, but also above his head. One of the drops accidentally dripped on his Suyu's skin, immediately corroding a huge bloody hole in his arm, causing Suyu to gasp. What a strong poison. He now had the physical strength of a double-crowned divine warrior, and a mere drop could corrode his body. How terrible would it be if all of it was poured onto his body? He finally understood why 2 of the Dustless Moon sect's double-crowned head attendants had fallen here. Each step was a trap, and each step was a restriction. Each was not particularly powerful, but when stacked together, the risk of a double-crowned divine warrior dying was greatly increased. He made a grabbing motion with his large hand and grabbed the extremely black robe. Then he fled with it. The black robe's isolation ability was extremely strong, and it was naturally effective against the corrosive poison. He put it on and soared into the air. Sure enough, the corrosive liquid could not penetrate the black robe. After a few consecutive flashes, he left the corrosive area. As soon as he landed, the traps and restrictions were triggered again. Helpless, so you could only focus on dealing with them. Just like that, the 6th vortex, which seemed to have been more than halfway through, exhausted all of Suyu's divine power and various means. When he arrived at the end of the tunnel, in front of a huge silver-white stone door, Suyu wiped the sweat from his forehead. That dark-skinned man thought too easily. 39 traps and restrictions along the way, let alone the 10 of them. Even if there were 100 times more of them, it would still be impossible. Of course, this was also because Suyu did not deliberately destroy the traps and let them continue to act as roadblocks to block the people of the Dustless Moon faction. Otherwise, he could have used his divine techniques to bombard the surroundings, which would have been much easier. Right now was the end of the tunnel, and behind the stone door was the secret realm. Judging from the layers of traps and restrictions arranged in the tunnel, it was a very big deal. It would take at least a triple-crown divine warrior a long time to open a tunnel at full strength, and it would take at least a year for a triple-crown divine warrior to open all 6 paths. What was in the secret realm was not easy to imagine. Therefore, he did not rush forward, but stayed where he was to recover his divine power and physical strength. At the same time, after 2 hours, the turmoil outside finally subsided. The 10,000 strong men of the Dustless Moon faction had shocked the crowd with their slaughter. Coupled with Master Bao Kuan's personal attack, they had finally killed more than 100,000 people to intimidate the million people. Master Bao Kuan was a benevolent old man dressed in a white robe. However, the moon-worshipping followers present would never forget that it was this old man who had just killed more than 10,000 people with a casual strike. His ruthlessness was far greater than all the dustless moon faction disciples. Master, they have been reorganized, the Black Lotus Demon Lord said nervously, afraid that his master would be angry. Master Bao Kuan said lightly, "Continue to open the secret realm as soon as possible. The news is leaking faster and faster." Chapter 1862. He glanced at a few of them and smiled contemptuously, as if he had seen the hidden forces among them. "Yes," the Black Lotus Demon Lord said respectfully. All of a sudden, a frantic whistling sound could be heard from within the tent. Master Bao Kuan's expression changed. The Black Lotus Demon Lord said in disbelief, Did someone reach the end of the tunnel?" Everyone who entered the vortex carried a communication jade talisman with them. In fact, in addition to communication, the jade had another function, which was to locate someone. Once someone reached the end, the jade would send a signal immediately. Now, it was a sign that the location of the jade had reached the end. How was this possible? The Black Lotus Demon Lord couldn't believe it. Just now, millions of people were in chaos, and they didn't arrange for people to enter the 6 vortexes. As for the previous batch, all of their communication jade talismans were dark and dull, which meant that they had all died in there. What was going on with the signal that suddenly popped up? Whoosh! Master Bao Kuan disappeared, and the Black Lotus Demon Lord immediately followed him to the tent. In the center of the tent, there was a formation plate with a circumference of 100 feet. There were 6 tunnels simulated on the formation plate. The end of the tunnel marked with 6 continued to shine brightly. Master Bao Kuan's eyes flashed as he said, "Contact this person immediately." The Black Lotus Demon Lord bowed and immediately took out the communication treasure that corresponded to Su Yu's jade and sent a message. In the depths of the 6th vortex, Su Yu had just recovered his divine power when the jade on his waist rang softly. He scanned it with his soul, and a message from the Black Lotus Demon Lord appeared immediately. "Have the seals and traps been destroyed along the way?" Su Yu curled up the corners of his mouth and said, "Break them all. Please spare my life." There was no response from the other side. They didn't care about his life or death. What they cared about was whether all the seals and traps had been destroyed. Soon, a series of screams came from the depths of the tunnel. The sound was deep and thick, and it didn't sound like the weak moon-worshipping disciples, but the disciples of the dustless moon faction who rushed here in a hurry. The giant blood-red net must have given them a big surprise. Sure enough, the jade on his body immediately transmitted a flustered and exasperated message. "What's going on? Why are the seals and traps still there?" Su Yu replied calmly, "How would I know? Why don't you come and ask me in person?" Sensing that something was amiss, Black Lotus Demon Lord shouted in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Take a guess." Su Yu laughed playfully. After that, he pinched 2 of his fingers together and completely crushed the jade. The reason he had left behind these restrictions and mechanisms was to prevent the dustless moon sect from catching up immediately. He believed that without Master Bao Kuan's help, it would take at least 7 to 8 days to break through these mechanisms. Turning his head to look at the silver-white door, he flicked his sleeves, and a gust of wind blew, easily pushing the door open. Dragon scales appeared all over his body, and the true dragon divine fire enveloped his body. He even condensed the silk in his palm. As expected, the moment the silver door opened, a gust of nameless black wind rushed over without any warning. The black wind was mixed with an intense stench. The corrosive power of the black wind was even stronger than the corrosive liquid he had encountered before. More than half of his true dragon divine fire was extinguished. His robe was covered in black dust, and a large part of it had been corroded. The remaining black wind blew on his skin, directly cracking his dragon scales. Su Yu secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he had taken precautions. Looking over, He saw a beehive the size of a water tank hanging on the lintel of the silver door. The moment the door opened, it touched the beehive. The beehive would release a terrifying black wind, which would destroy the person who opened the door. Dashing out of the silver door, Suyu carefully closed it. He believed that he could teach the dustless moon sect a lesson. Only then did he begin to size up the secret realm behind the silver door. Unexpectedly, what appeared in front of him was a vast ocean, a vast expanse of whiteness. Compared to the white ocean outside, it was even more dazzling. Scattered islands dotted the white ocean. The silver door was located on one of these islands. A secret realm? Suyu's eyes scanned the surroundings. He had investigated the Emperor Killing Sword in detail. It was said that it had been crafted by an ancient path master who had entered the path of killing. He had slaughtered countless living beings in his lifetime, and his body contained an earth-shattering, murderous aura. Before he passed away, he had used the horn on the top of his head to forge a sword that gathered murderous aura. It was called the Emperor Killing Sword. A shred of the Killing Path Master's consciousness had been integrated into the sword, which made the Emperor Killing Sword extremely intelligent, comparable to a living being. It could parasitize living beings. When a living being unknowingly held onto the sword, the Emperor Killing Sword would take the opportunity to integrate into the living being's body, making itself one with the living being. Then, it would control the living being to continue slaughtering the common people. In the past, the Killing Path Master had committed too many murders, so he was besieged by countless strong men who killed him. No one had expected that the Killing Path Master had barely managed to escape, leaving behind such a huge problem before his death. The sword had slaughtered dozens of five-star civilizations, devouring countless living beings. In the end, the Ecliptic Palace took action. Several Path Masters joined forces to suppress the sword, sealing it in the Ecliptic Palace and erasing the consciousness that the Killing Path Master had left in it over the years. Only then did it slowly become one of the ancient swords of the Ecliptic Palace. However, after a rain of Tao descended, the sword suddenly disappeared, never to be seen again. Suyu did not expect that it would reappear in the Dark Star Civilization, a four-star civilization. Although the consciousness of the Killing Path Master has been erased from this sword, it is still a sword full of murderous intent. Wherever it passes, it must be filled with murderous intent. Suyu thought to himself. However, when he looked around, the surroundings were peaceful, without any trace of powerful murderous intent. It seems like I've come here for nothing. Suyu sighed in disappointment. However, since he had come here, there was no reason for him to leave just like that. He looked around and suddenly discovered that there was a living being's aura on an island, and it was not weak. There was a double crown emperor, several single crown emperors, and hundreds of peak overlords. Oh, this secret realm has existed for so many years, yet there are still living beings that have survived until now. Suyu was slightly curious, and after a few breaths, he appeared on the island. The island was like a shell in the middle of the white sea, looking exquisite and exquisite. On the island, there were strange living beings dressed beautifully. Their bodies were snow white, and their hair was golden. They were tall and slender, looking very similar to humans. However, different parts of their bodies had a white moon mark. As expected, they are living beings from the extraterrestrial civilization. Suyu nodded slightly. If he was not mistaken, they should have been left behind by the extraterrestrial civilization that had invaded the Dark Star civilization. Suyu did not deliberately hide his existence, so he was quickly discovered. Enemy situation. Enemy situation. The island's alarm sounded loudly. Urgent sounds of flute playing could be heard. Before Suyu could understand the mystery of the flute sound, he looked behind him in surprise. He saw a black mass of flying insects flying towards him from the horizon. There were more than 1 million of them. At the same time, spiritual insects appeared one after another on the island and in the sea. In the blink of an eye, tens of millions of insects surrounded Suyu. So, they're controlling spiritual insects. Interesting. Suyu nodded slightly, and the dragon blood in his body started to circulate, emitting a powerful dragon's aura. The ferocious spirit insects immediately panicked and scattered, not daring to come any closer. The flute's sound rose and fell, and the spiritual insects could no longer be controlled, scurrying around in panic. The whole island was in chaos. Suyu glanced in the direction of the center of the island and said calmly, "This is not the way to treat a guest." After a moment of silence, a sigh came from the center of the island. "Ah, I didn't expect the ancestors' legend to be true." Swish! A white-faced elder with a goatee stood in front of Suyu, looking hale and hearty. He looked Suyu up and down, who looked very different from them, and said leisurely, "The ancestor said that one day someone from an extraterrestrial civilization would come here and take away the things left by the ancestor. The ancestor's prophecy is amazing." Suyu's eyes flashed with an obscure light. "Oh, may I ask who the ancestor is?" "The ancestor of the Daesun clan, Emperor Bai." The goatee elder's eyes shone brightly. Suyu shook his head lightly. "I've never heard of him." He had only heard of the Darkmoon clan, but had never heard of the existence of the Daesun clan. The Darkmoon clan and the Daesun clan were exactly opposite in terms of their names and skin color. He wondered if there was any special connection between them. "It's normal that you haven't heard of him. Even we don't know what kind of person Emperor Bai was," the goatee elder said slowly. "However, the things that Emperor Bai left behind are absolutely true. He warned his descendants that if one day an outsider came to take them, they must hand over the things and not keep them in their hands." "Is that so? Why doesn't it sound like something good? But since he was here, he naturally had to take a look." "You mean you want to give that thing to me?" Suyu asked. The goatee elder nodded slowly. "That's right. We will abide by Emperor Bai's last words." Someone was giving him something as soon as he arrived. "Haha, not bad. Lead the way." The goatee elder led Suyu onto the island. Many of the Daesun clan members on the island looked at Suyu with surprise and vigilance. Their eyes were wide open. Suyu responded with a calm smile. With the goatee elder leading the way, Suyu arrived at the center of the island. A snow-white stone as tall as a human was placed in the center. In front of the stone was a giant incense burner, and an endless stream of living creatures came to worship it. "You're not talking about this stone, are you?" Suyu was slightly surprised. He really could not see what was going on inside the stone. There was a mysterious power that hindered his vision. The goatee elder nodded slightly. "That's right. That is the divine stone of the Daesun clan. The Daesun stone was also left behind by the White Emperor." "Are you really willing to give it to me?" Suyu asked again. The goatee elder stroked his beard. "As long as you can carry it, of course you can." "Carry it? Is it really that heavy?" Suyu's heart skipped a beat. He walked up to the Daesun stone. Dragon scales appeared on his arms, and his body was surrounded by the law of giant strength. He used all his strength and hugged the stone. Unexpectedly, it was not as heavy as he had imagined. In fact, it was very light. A hint of coldness flashed past Suyu's lips. Even without turning his head, he could hear the goatee elder's thoughts. Chapter 1863. If you can't lift it, it could be because it's too heavy, or you don't have the right to lift it. The goateed man stood with his hands behind his back, calmly looking at Suyu. Little did he know that his thoughts had been completely exposed to Suyu's ears the moment they met. There was something wrong with the White Sun Divine Stone, something very wrong. Suyu easily picked her up, and it was as easy as blowing off dust. By the time he realized something was wrong, it was already too late. From within the White Sun Divine Stone, a dense fog of light suddenly burst forth, instantly enveloping Suyu. Without waiting for Suyu to react, the dense fog of light turned into a cage, trapping him within it. The gap in the cage was extremely small, and it was very sturdy. Suyu tried to use the body of the double-crowned emperor to tear it open, but the light fog cage did not budge. "Don't waste your energy, extraterrestrial being. This is a seal left behind by the White Emperor, specifically designed to restrain extraterrestrial beings. Even the Three-Crown Emperor would be helpless if trapped, let alone a mere peak overlord like you." The goateed old man revealed his true colors, calmly saying. Suyu, who had been carelessly tricked, had a gloomy expression. "You lied to me?" Crash! a few of the White Sun warriors who had been lying in ambush surrounded Suyu. The goateed old man said disdainfully, "Our ancestors once said that extraterrestrial beings are cunning. If anyone asks for the White Sun Divine Stone, let them have it. It seems that the extraterrestrial beings are nothing more than this." Suyu clenched his teeth. "We have no enmity. Why did you lie to me?" His face was full of anger and confusion, and he seemed to be on point. The goateed old man said calmly, "I lied to you because you are still useful." Without waiting for Suyu to ask, the goateed old man waved his hand, and a group of White Sun warriors immediately carried the cage away. Suyu struggled in the cage, but could not escape. He could only watch helplessly as he was carried away. Of course, this was what the White Sun clan thought of Suyu. Only Suyu knew what he truly felt. "Oh, interesting. Apart from me, they have captured many extraterrestrial beings who accidentally entered this place." Suyu was willing to wait for death because he had heard what the goateed old man was thinking. It turned out that apart from Suyu, there were other beings who had been captured. In other words, the dangerous whirlpool passage wasn't the only entrance to this place. In other words, the saintess who went missing after coming to the secret realm might also be here. That was why he pretended to be a captive. If he could find the saintess, it would be the best. He would kill her with a sword and eliminate any future troubles. Seeing that Suyu was being taken away, the elder with the goatee placed the White Sunstone on the ground back to its original spot. He then bowed deeply. "Ancestor, please forgive us descendants. It is not that we want to go against your wishes, but that we must find a way to leave this space. Otherwise, our whole clan will be exterminated. Those beings from the extraterrestrial civilizations are helping us." The White Sun clan's warrior brought Suyu deep underground. It turned out that under the seemingly narrow island, there was actually an extremely large underground space. The area was extremely vast, and even with Suyu's soul energy as a three-crown martial emperor, he could not see through it with a single glance. It was estimated to be at least half the size of the Day Sun clan space. The entire underground had been excavated. Whoosh! As soon as he entered, he heard the sound of chains rolling. Looking in the direction of the sound, he saw a ragged dark moon being, his right leg bound by a long chain. The other end of the chain was tied to a chubby White Sun clan being. He held the chain in one hand and a long whip in the other, lashing the dark moon being fiercely. Under the whip, the dark moon being trembled. He unleashed the dark moon divine light and continued to dig deeper into the ground to open up this place. Upon closer inspection, there were at least 10,000 similar scenes. Many of the beings bound by the chains were dark moon beings, and only a few were from other clans. But without exception, they were all forced to open up an underground world by the Day Sun clan. At that moment, the Day Sun clan's warrior who was carrying the cage retrieved the chain that had been prepared beforehand and wrapped it around Suyu's ankle. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. He did not dodge, allowing himself to be bound. Only then did the Day Sun clan's warrior relax and open the cage. "Fatty Luo, I've assigned you another newcomer." The Day Sun clan's warrior called out to the fatty from afar. The fat-headed, big-eared Day Sun tribesmen trotted over with the Dark Moon tribesmen like dogs. After sizing Suyu up, he grinned. "Aha, another peak overlord from an extraterrestrial civilization. I was worried that I couldn't catch up with the progress this month." "Hee. Then you must remember to treat us to a good meal," the Day Sun clan's warrior said with a cheeky smile. Fatty Luo patted his belly. "Don't worry, Fatty Luo, have plenty of good stuff." As he spoke, Fatty Luo took out a small bag and tossed it over. "Eat as much as you want, don't stand on ceremony." The 4 Day Sun clan's warriors opened the bag, their faces filled with excitement. Glorious sun fruit. "Fatty Luo, you're a good friend. If I have more good stuff next time, I'll definitely give it to you." Suyu secretly curled his lips. The glorious sun fruit was a very common spiritual fruit in the Dark Star civilization. Generally, only people below the level of deities would be interested in eating it because the vital energy it contained was very little. The 4 Day Sun clan's warriors were all bronze overlords, yet they were still excited about such a small thing. It seemed like the resources in this cavern world were quite scarce. After the 4 Daesun clan's warriors left, Fatty Luo grabbed one of the chains that bound Suyu with one hand and laughed. Little baby, from now on, work for me obediently. If you're obedient, you'll have food. If you're disobedient, hee, I'll let you have a taste of the whip. As he spoke, he lashed out with the whip. He wanted Suyu to remember the taste of the whip so that it would be easier to discipline him. The people of the Dark Moon clan shrunk their necks and secretly sighed. Another unlucky fellow. Fatty Luo was one of the few Daesun clan members who was cruel and merciless. More than half of the extraterrestrial civilization creatures who fell into his hands did not die of exhaustion or battle, but were tortured to death by him. If he was slightly displeased, he would beat people up. Occasionally, when he was drunk, he would beat people to death. Before him, Fatty Luo had already killed 7 or 8 extraterrestrial civilization creatures like this. He had only barely survived until now because of his good luck. Looking at the weak human captive, he secretly pitied him. However, the human was not afraid. Instead, he looked around leisurely. Only when the whip was about to hit him did he turn his head and look at Fatty Luo. Suddenly, Fatty Luo felt as if he had been ruthlessly whipped. His fat body trembled violently, and his hand went limp. The whip that he had struck fell to the ground. Pick up the whip. Don't let anyone see it. Suyu calmly glanced around. Yes, master. Fatty Luo's eyes were still very lively, but his respect for Suyu came from the bottom of his heart. Do not call me master. Call me human. Yes, human. Now, that's more like it. The people of the Dark Moon clan were so shocked that their jaws dropped. This is a divine technique? No, this is a secret technique of the soul. How is this possible? Don't tell me this chain didn't seal you. Unless you are a divine warrior of heaven and earth, there is no way you can break free from these chains. To prevent the captive from escaping, the chains that bound the captive were not ordinary ones, but specially made ones that suppressed divine energy and soul energy. Only the inspector who held the chains could use the chains to remove part of the bindings. Because of this, Fatty Luo could control him, a silver overlord, even though he only had the cultivation of a bronze overlord. But what about the human in front of him? It was shocking that he could use secret techniques of the soul despite being suppressed. A divine warrior of heaven and earth? More or less, Suyu said calmly. He was not a divine warrior of heaven and earth, but if the double-crowned divine warrior encountered him, he might not be able to escape successfully. Suyu looked at the people of the Dark Moon clan with a thoughtful expression. The people of the Dark Moon clan felt that something was amiss. If the fact that Suyu had the inspector under his control was leaked, it would be detrimental to Suyu. If you're Suyu, he would definitely kill Suyu immediately to keep the secret forever. Wait, you can't kill me. If I die, it will attract the attention of the White Emperor puppet. The people of the Dark Moon clan had an idea. Suyu's eyes flickered. The White Emperor puppet? What is that? Only then did the people of the Dark Moon clan heave a sigh of relief. You can't be thinking that the strongest person in the Daesun clan is that old man with a goatee, right? Was that not the case? He was the person with the strongest soul energy on the entire island. 3 years ago, a strong man of the double-crowned divine warrior accidentally fell here. He chose to fight it out with the old man with a goatee. He did win, but he still became a captive. Why? Because the White Emperor puppet attacked. The people of the Dark Moon clan looked around cautiously, lowering their voices. Although the ancestor of the Daesun clan, the White Emperor, had fallen countless years ago, before he died, he made 2 extremely special mechanical puppets for his descendants. They were extraordinarily powerful, and each of their palms was as powerful as the attack of the triple-crowned divine warrior. 3 years ago, the double-crowned divine warrior lured the White Emperor puppet out and was injured by it, becoming a captive. A puppet at the level of the triple-crowned divine warrior? Suyu's eyes were filled with surprise, but he was not the least bit surprised. In the tunnel of the 6th vortex, the puppet of the double-crowned divine warrior had already appeared, so why would the puppet of the triple-crowned divine warrior appear as well? He just did not know how much weaker these 2 puppets of the triple-crowned divine warrior were compared to the real triple-crowned divine warrior. But to be able to easily crush the double-crowned divine warrior, they should not be too weak. Suyu secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he did not directly attack on the island. Otherwise, if he attracted the attention of the two white emperor puppets, it would be troublesome. At that time, Suyu, who had completely exposed his cultivation level, would not have been restricted by just this ordinary chain. It was very likely that it would have been a chain specially made for those above the martial emperor realm. A moment of caution had saved him from a disaster. Where are the puppets? Suyu asked. Do they have their own intelligence? The people of the Dark Moon clan pointed to the surroundings. They're near the underground space, monitoring all the captives. Once they discover any abnormalities, they will immediately appear. Did that mean they had intelligence? That was a little tricky. After thinking for a moment, Suyu said, Let me ask you 2 questions. First, how did you come in? Chapter 1864. The Black Moon was the only moon of the Dark Star civilization. It would be full once a year. At that time, the Dark Moon divine light released by the Black Moon was at its strongest. It was more than 10 times stronger than any other day of the year. Therefore, most Dark Moon clansmen would cultivate on this day. That day, I was chasing after an enemy, but who would have thought that the Black Moon would suddenly cast a strange moonlight that enveloped me? By the time I realized it, I had already entered this space. After that, I was tricked by the goateed elder and became a prisoner. The others were teleported on the day of the full moon. He looked at Suyu in surprise. Today wasn't a full moon, so why had he come to this space? The second question is, did the Holy Maiden of the Moon worshipping cult fall in here a year ago? Suyu asked. The Dark Moon clansman stilled. Who? Moon-worshipping cult saintess? How is that possible? Seeing that Suyu's eyes were gradually turning cold, the people of the Dark Moon clan immediately said, Wait, I have never heard of the worshipping moon sect leader. But if I were the worshipping moon sect leader, I wouldn't easily reveal my identity as the Holy Maiden, right? His words were reasonable. The Holy Maiden probably didn't show her true face to others, so it was unlikely that anyone would be able to recognize her. If that was the case, it would be troublesome to find the saintess herself. Even if he brought the moon-worshipping holy stone that could detect the identity of the saintess. As long as the saintess touched it, it would continue to glow. It seems like I'll have to give it some thought before I find her, Suyu thought to himself. He then pointed his finger at the space between Fatty Luo's brows. Suyu's soul divine crystal was flooded with memories in his mind. A year ago, 100 people fell into this place and were all captured by the White Sun clan. Among them, there were 50 women who were controlled by another censor. All of the captives would be locked up in a huge cage every night during the night's rest. That was the best time to look for it. Right at that moment, Suyu's sharp senses detected a powerful gaze rapidly shooting toward him. Suyu's heart shuddered, and he immediately gave Fatty Luo an order. Fatty Luo waved his whip and shouted, Newcomers, get to work! Suyu immediately activated his divine power and started to dig the ground. Almost at the same time, a tyrannical gaze swept over and stared at this place for a few breaths before disappearing. That was close. The members of the Dark Moon race secretly wiped their cold sweat. That was the White Emperor's puppet. Suyu nodded slightly. Zhang Xin pondered as he dug underground. From Fatty Luo's memory, he knew that the White Sun clan had begun excavating the underground space under the island 100 years ago. Their goal was to use it as a refuge. Because in this world, other than the Day Sun clan, there was another extremely dangerous clan, the Blood clan. No one knew where the blood race came from, but they had existed since ancient times. They came in all kinds of forms, including insects, fish, birds, and beasts. Their common trait was extreme bloodlust. Occasionally, a small group of vampires would attack the island and devour the Day Sun race. There would be a major attack every 10 or more years. Every time, the White Sun clan would be able to repel them, but they would also suffer heavy losses. In the past, all the islands in this world were inhabited by the White Sun clan, but now, only a few of them remained on this island. The rest were devoured by the vampires. In order to avoid the disaster, The remaining Daesun clan members began to excavate the underground space of the island as a precaution against the bloodbreeds. The only fortunate thing was that the last large-scale attack by the vampires had been 3 years ago. According to experience, the next attack should be at least 7 years later, so there was no need to worry about being sent to deal with the vampires. In the past, the captives were all used as combat power. Once the vampires attacked, the captives would be thrown out to deal with the vampires and fend for themselves. As night fell, all the captives were gathered by the censors and thrown into a huge cage. Outside the cage, there was a row of houses. They were the caverns where the censors lived, and they were decorated lavishly. At this moment, in Fatty Luo's mansion, his hands were naturally hanging by his sides, and he was standing respectfully to the side. Suyu was sitting leisurely on the armchair, wiping part of the memory of a female captive summoned by Fatty Luo. No. Suyu took back a moon-shaped stone from his hands. He had asked Fatty Luo to summon all the female captives who had entered in the past year in the name of the censors. Now, he had summoned 10 in a row, but none were the same. There were still 40 left. Go again, Suyu said. The member of the Dark Moon clan bowed and said, Master Yu, we can't continue summoning. The captives are all under the responsibility of their respective censors. The censors of these 10 captives are on good terms with Fatty Luo, so it's fine to summon them. However, the other censors won't be so easy to deal with, especially the 3 tyrant sisters. They have always disliked Fatty Luo. In Fatty Luo's memory, there were indeed 3 tyrant sisters. Not only were they powerful, but they were also the direct descendants of the goateed elder. No one could afford to offend them. Once, Fatty Luo had unintentionally provoked them, and they had beaten him until he couldn't move. Indeed, we can't continue summoning female captives, Suyu agreed. The member of the Dark Moon clan heaved a sigh of relief. He was terrified by Suyu's audacious behavior. Fortunately, he had restrained himself. I should have gone to all the censors directly, Suyu said indifferently. Let's go. Bring me to see the 3 tyrant sisters first. Huh? The member of the Dark Moon clan felt his legs turn to jelly. Crazy. He must be crazy. The eldest of the 3 tyrant sisters, Baiyu, was a divine warrior of heaven and earth. Wasn't seeking his own death by going to him? Yes. Fatty Luo held onto 2 chains and dragged the reluctant member of the Dark Moon clan over. However, something unexpected happened. Before Suyu could do anything, the entire underground world suddenly rang with a loud alarm. At the same time, almost all the censors rushed out of the house. Their expressions changed drastically as they roared. All captives, get ready for battle. The quiet underground world suddenly exploded like ants in a frying pan. The captives were quickly released from the iron cages and handed over to their respective censors. Tens of thousands of captives were quickly brought under control and stood outside the cages. Under Suyu's command, Fatty Luo led the other 2 outside. There were 3 beautiful and graceful female censors, each holding onto 2 female captives. Surprisingly, all the female captives under their control, except for one, were divine warriors with single crowns. The female censor in the middle was controlling a male captive who was a divine warrior with double crowns. The member of the Dark Moon clan said in a low voice, The one in the middle is Baiyu, the eldest of the 3 sisters. She is the most powerful, at the level of a divine warrior with single crowns. The one on the left is Ba Feng, and the one on the right is Ba Shui. They are both half a step to the divine warrior level. The 3 of them, together with the captives under their control, were a force to be reckoned with. Suyu's eyes were fixed on the only female captive who was a peak overlord. She was dressed in a gray robe, and her head was bowed so deeply that her face could not be seen clearly. But for some reason, his heart throbbed inexplicably. Who is she? Suyu stared at the woman. Could she be the Saint Lady? The member of the Dark Moon clan followed his gaze and immediately said, She is Baiyu's most trusted captive, Xin Wu. She is very powerful. Oh, how powerful? Suyu asked thoughtfully. The member of the Dark Moon clan said, I don't know the specifics, but Bayou has always been able to far surpass the other censors. Half of the credit goes to Xin Wu. It is said that her true abilities are probably above that of the Double Crown Emperor. Moreover, apart from the Double Crown Emperor, she is the only captive who was personally subdued by the White Emperor's puppet. I heard that she even injured the White Emperor's puppet, which made the people of the White Sun clan very angry. Injured the White Emperor's puppet? Su Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. The Saint Lady of the moon-worshipping cult had the power to restrain the moon-worshipping cult master, so she must have something to rely on. What was she relying on? It must be some unknown power. The possibility of this woman being the Saint Lady was extremely high. While staring deeply at the woman, Bayou's eyes were sharp as he said, "The Blood Clan is attacking. All captives, prepare for battle." She had a head of soft golden hair, a straight and slender figure, and a pair of dreamy blue eyes filled with coldness and depth. At this moment, she was shouting fiercely and valiantly. All censors lead the captives into the sky above the island to meet the enemy. She took the two powerful captives and left the underground space, appearing in the sky above the island. Su Yu and the others followed closely behind. The people of the Dark Moon clan looked relaxed as they said disapprovingly, "Don't worry, Master Yu. The Blood Clan launched a large-scale attack 3 years ago. According to history, it would take at least 7 years for them to gather again for a large-scale attack. This should be a small-scale sneak attack. Maybe we won't even need to fight to finish off the Blood Clan." Was that so? Su Yu's soul was far stronger than that of ordinary people. His gaze swept deep into the sky, and his expression changed slightly. In Fatty Luo's memory, 1,000 or less Blood Clan was considered a small disturbance. 10,000 or more was considered a medium-sized attack, and more than 100,000 was considered a large-scale attack. But Su Yu roughly sensed the number of Blood Clan, and there were 100,000 of them. Chirp! A sharp chirp suddenly resounded in the sky above the island. A blue bird soared into the sky, as if to remind them of something. It's a blue bird. A blue bird is an early warning of a large-scale attack. Is there a mistake? A large-scale attack by the Blood Clan just happened 3 years ago. The people of the Dark Moon clan were dumbfounded, their pupils constricting to the size of needles. Their voices trembled as they said, "Impossible! There must be a mistake. There must be a mistake." The White Sun clan raised 3 kinds of birds all year round, Bai Hong and Lan. They had an extremely strong ability to sense the Blood Clan. When there were less than 1,000 Blood Clan members, the white bird would tear through the sky and cry. When there were more than 10,000 Blood Clan members, the red bird would tear through the sky and cry. The blue bird was the quietest, and it rarely cried unless there were more than 100,000 Blood Clan members attacking. Right now, the blue bird was crying urgently. Hearing that cry, the captives, the censors, and the people of the White Sun clan who were looking up at the sky all fell into deep panic and disbelief. It had only been 3 years, and yet another large-scale attack? Chapter 1865. Whoosh! The old man with the goatee appeared in front of the crowd, staring at the blue bird. "Everyone, don't panic," the old man said in a low tone. "The other islands all have messenger birds. One blue bird flying does not mean anything." Even though the other islands no longer had any Daylight Clan members. Periodically, the Daylight Clan would head there to feed the messenger birds living on the islands. In the past, to determine if the Blood Clan was attacking, they had to rely on the reactions of several islands. 1 or 2 birds flying did not mean anything. It was as if they were responding to his words. Chirp! At that moment, on an island not far away, a blue figure flew into the sky, rapidly chirping. Not long after, the blue figure on another island also flew into the sky. Within the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, bluebirds flew out one after another, chirping in the sky. The old man's expression finally changed, becoming extremely ugly. The Daylight Clan members were also in a panic. Why? Why was this happening? After 3 years, the Blood Clan had once again gathered a large force to invade? This did not make sense. 3 years ago, they had killed more than half of the Blood Clan. How could they gather more than 100,000 Blood Clan members? But the Bluebirds' message was undeniable. They had changed their decision. The old man with a goatee shouted, "All Daylight Clan members, enter the underground world to seek refuge. The Daylight Clan warriors, prepare for battle. The inspectors will lead the captives in front, the warriors behind. F***CK. We are dead for sure this time. Sigh, we managed to avoid a calamity 3 years ago, but this time we are definitely going to die. I hate the Daylight Clan. The captives are the first to curse. This damn clan did not even treat them as living beings. In times of peace, they dug underground safe houses, and in times of danger, they were sent to face the enemy. Their anger was directed towards the Daylight Clan. Then, the sound of whips rang out, and screams of pain pierced the sky. The old man with a goatee had an indifferent expression. Since you're captives, you should have the self-awareness of captives. Send them to the battlefield. Under the control of the inspectors, all the captives were sent to the front lines of the battlefield. After that, the Daylight Clan warriors were sent. The captives were used as a buffer zone to block the Blood Clan's attack. Only then would it be the Daylight Clan warriors' turn. Suyu's gaze turned cold. The Daylight Clan was decisive and ruthless. However, if the White Sun Clan wanted to use him as a sandbag in the buffer zone, they were really thinking too much. Under his orders, Fatty Luo led Suyu and the people of the Dark Moon Clan to the front line to welcome the incoming Blood Clan. At this moment, he could already see the indistinct bloodlines on the horizon with his naked eye. They were like the front waves of a tsunami, crashing over. Rumble. The White Sun Clan warrior swallowed his saliva, showing his nervousness and apprehension. 3 years. It had only been 3 years. The White Sun Clan was completely unprepared for this war. Boom, boom. The rumbling sound of thousands of soldiers marching in unison sounded like muffled thunder from afar. It was like a war drum pounding on people's hearts, torturing their wills bit by bit. He was close. At the very front, they could already see a group of Blood Tribe members of various races that were more than 1,000 feet tall. They came in different shapes. Some looked like giant bulls, while others looked like mutated hounds. Their bodies were huge, and they were like a huge wall that rapidly pressed down. Behind them were innumerable vampires who were gradually shrinking in stature. Every single one of them was bursting with an astonishing, devouring intent. Here it comes. They were separated by 10,000 zhang. War was unavoidable. Charge! The old man with a goatee shouted, ordering all the captives to charge forward to counteract the powerful momentum of the other party. The inspectors released part of their seals and held onto the other end of the chains, retreating behind the White Sun Clan warriors. This scene caused the captives to be unable to restrain their anger. They had really forced them into a dead end. Brothers, since we're going to die anyway, let's kill these White Sun Clan beasts. Among the captives, a captive who had been held captive for 20 years and had experienced 2 large-scale attacks by the Blood Tribe roared and charged forward. But before he could make a move, the inspector who was restraining him lightly pinched his chains, causing the captive to explode into a bloody mist on the spot. The old man with a goatee said indifferently, "Retreat and die. If you advance, you might survive." His cold words frightened all the restless captives who were about to change sides at the last moment. The longer a living being lived, the more tenacious their will to live. They would not give up, even if there was only a sliver of hope. The Blood Tribe was indeed dangerous, but what if they were lucky enough to survive? The eyes of the old man with a goatee flashed, and he took the opportunity to shout, "I can promise that whoever makes a contribution this time will be exempted from the status of a slave and become one of us." The moment these words came out, it caused a huge commotion. But before the old man with a goatee could state the specific requirements, the Blood Tribe was already within reach. For the sake of survival, for the sake of making a contribution, the captives' fighting spirits soared, and they roared as they charged forward. Kill! Tens of thousands of captives instantly charged forward. To them, the distance of tens of thousands of meters was covered in the blink of an eye. Boom! Both sides collided. In an instant, large numbers of captives were crushed into minced meat. Not even their bones were left. The entire front line of the captives was pushed back by the Blood Tribe, but it did slow down the Blood Tribe's attack. When they retreated tens of thousands of meters, the Blood Tribe's attack had basically stopped. But the casualties of the captives were extremely tragic. More than 60% of them had died in the collision just now. Kill. The old man with a goatee took the lead, leading the White Sun Clan warriors to attack. Rays of innate white light intertwined, as bright as day, instantly killing many Blood Tribe members, creating a large gap in the surging Blood Tribe. The fighting power of the White Sun Clan was not weak. The white light, similar to the Black Moon Divine Light, was even more powerful, having the special ability to turn the enemy into nothingness. In an instant, the White Sun Clan warriors and inspectors all joined the battle. Both sides engaged in a life-and-death battle in the sky above the island. As for the ordinary White Sun Clan creatures, they all hid in the excavated underground space. There was a faint, extremely powerful aura guarding the entrance, most likely the two extremely powerful White Emperor puppets. The scene was chaotic as they fought head-on. From time to time, Blood Tribe members would be killed, or the captives would die, or the White Sun Clan warriors would be eaten. But there was one place that was very special. Suyu and the Dark Moon Clan people stood there motionlessly, but the large number of Blood Tribe members charging over seemed to have discussed it beforehand, deliberately avoiding Suyu. Not a single one dared to approach. Upon closer inspection, one could sense that the passing Blood Tribe members were especially afraid of the two of them. Or rather, they were afraid of Suyu. The Dark Moon Clan people were shocked. At first, they were terrified, but they gradually got used to this strange scene. What happened? Why don't they dare attack us? The Dark Moon Clan people were shocked. Suyu had his hands behind his back, his expression indifferent. Of course, the Blood Tribe did not dare attack him. With his body of dragon blood, ferocious beasts like the Blood Tribe should be afraid of him. Unless there was a high-level attack from the Blood Tribe. His eyes calmly stare at one place. A slender woman and a middle-aged, double-crowned emperor were bound by chains, killing the Blood Tribe members on the battlefield. He was staring at the woman. Her cultivation level was only that of a peak overlord, but she possessed a special, obscure power that could destroy a large number of Blood Tribe members with a wave of her hand. On the other hand, the double-crowned emperor next to her did not even have half the power of the woman. The power of faith. "I found you, Saint Lady." Suyu's eyes were slightly cold. That familiar obscure power was very similar to the power of faith in the divine pool of the moon-worshipping cult's main altar. Her identity was self-evident. The Saint Lady of the moon-worshipping cult. The only existence that could restrain the moon-worshipping cult leader. She was also the only existence that could see through Suyu's identity. She must not be allowed to live. At least before he mobilized the power of the moon-worshipping cult and found the Emperor Killer Sword, he could not allow anyone to interfere with him. He took a step forward and slowly walked towards her. All the Blood Tribe members along the way automatically made way for him. Even if they were fighting with the Daysun clan and the captives, they automatically made way for him. The strange scene gradually attracted the attention of many people, including the old man with a goatee. What's wrong with that person? Why doesn't the Blood Tribe dare to attack him? Strange. What do they want to do if he doesn't kill the Blood Tribe? Under everyone's gaze, Suyu walked to within 1,000 feet of the woman. The woman seemed to sense him and looked over. Under the gray robe, her face could not be seen clearly, but her slightly surprised gaze could be felt. "Let's fight together," the woman said in a hoarse voice and devoted herself to the battle. Suyu stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "I've been looking for you for a long time, Saint Lady of the Moon-worshipping cult." He did not have the slightest intention of making a move. "You are?" The woman trembled, and under the gray robe, there was a strong sense of excitement. The moon-worshipping cult leader? Suyu did not admit it, nor did he deny it. A trace of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. It seemed that he had not found the wrong person. "It's fine as long as you are," Suyu said indifferently as he pulled out the Azura sword. Although he wanted to kill the Saint Lady, he would not kill an innocent person without asking clearly. Since the other party there was nothing more to be said. However, just as he was about to strike, a shocking murderous aura rushed out from the back of the Blood Tribe army. The murderous aura was shocking, as if it had gathered countless murderous thoughts. Even Su Yu's heart trembled. The old man with the goatee's expression changed drastically. What a terrifying murderous aura! He had never encountered such a terrifying murderous aura in his life. Su Yu's eyes shone brightly. The Emperor Killing Sword. Only such a sword with such a deep and vicious aura could release a murderous aura that could destroy heaven and earth. He turned the long sword and swept it in front of him. The heaven-cutting sword was swung out, and a huge sword energy that was 10,000 feet long cleared a 10,000 feet wide area in front of him. The shocking sword shocked the old man with a goatee and the many inspectors who were fighting. What's with that sword? Amazing swordsmanship. That sword is comparable to the divine warriors of heaven and earth. Su Yu's eyes were cold. He took a big step forward, dragging Fatty Luo behind him as he flew away. They sped through the empty area littered with corpses. As for the Saint Lady, she was left behind. What was his goal? It was the Emperor Killing Sword. Since the sword was right in front of him, it did not matter whether he killed the Saint Lady or not. Otherwise, he would be putting the cart before the horse. Quick, stop him. He brought the inspectors away. To be exact, he was dragging the inspectors away. Chapter 1866. The Boss sisters are the closest, and they could not help but yell, "Luo Huanxing, subdue her immediately." However, as soon as they spoke, the chains in Bayu's hands also changed. The chains that should have been tightly binding the woman suddenly lost their restraining power. The gray-robed woman immediately broke free of the chains and ran toward the place where the murderous aura was coming from. She let out a long breath. Thank goodness, this moment has finally come. Bayu looked at the chains that had broken free from her palms in disbelief. An extremely obscure power was swirling in her palms. She did not know when this obscure power had invaded her palms. When she was about to suppress the gray-robed woman, this power suddenly took effect, giving the gray-robed woman a chance to escape. Get the White Emperor's puppets to attack. We can't let her escape. Bayu knew how powerful and useful this woman was. How could she let her go? The old man's expression changed, but he did not attract the White Emperor's puppets. Father, she's about to escape. Bayu said anxiously. The old man said, now is not the time to care about a captive. The two White Emperor's puppets are the last line of defense to protect our people. We must not leave without permission. Otherwise, we may really face the danger of extinction. The White Emperor's puppets were protecting the entrance to the underground world. If one of them chased after the gray-robed woman, the Blood Clan would take the opportunity to invade the underground world. The consequences would be unimaginable. But Bayu was very reluctant. No buts. As long as she does not escape from this world, we can just catch her again. The old man with a goatee killed a huge Blood Clan member and shouted. Bayu could only watch the gray-robed woman escape, feeling helpless. Su Yu also noticed the Holy Maiden's movements, and his eyes narrowed. He was surprised that she could break free of the chains. However, she must have been waiting for the chaos of such a great battle. Otherwise, with the two White Emperor's puppets present, no matter how powerful she would not be able to escape. She would be caught sooner or later. Are you here for me, or for the Emperor Killing Sword? The Holy Maiden asked coldly as she caught up with Su Yu. Su Yu's murderous aura was so real. She was not a fool, so how could she not feel it? I came for the Emperor Killing Sword, and for you. But there's a priority. Let's get the Emperor Killing Sword first, Su Yu said calmly, not hiding his intentions. This was because the other party's intentions were very clear. It was also for the Emperor Killer Sword. Humph! The Slaughter Sword might not fall into your hands. The Saint Maiden snorted coldly and casually killed a large number of Blood Clan members. She then overtook Su Yu and left first. Before she could feel proud of herself, Su Yu, who was behind her, suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he left the Saints far behind and appeared directly at the rear of the Blood Race army. A group of 4 gigantic Blood Tri members were carrying a pool of extremely thick blood water. A 3-foot-long sword forged from white bones was stabbed into the pool of blood. The surface of the sword was densely covered with meridians, and bright red blood was clearly flowing in them. As the blood flowed, the meridians contracted and contracted. In the center of the sword hilt, there was a crystal gem about 3 inches in diameter. A beating heart could be seen in the gem. An overwhelming murderous aura enveloped the area. Ordinary people would be infected by this murderous aura, even if they didn't prostrate themselves before it, turning them into monsters that only knew how to kill. Even Su Yu felt an intense murderous intent emanating from his soul. He was obviously affected by it, but was still within his control. This was because he had the soul of the Triple Crown Divine Warrior. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine what kind of existence he would have become. Swish, the Saint Maiden also rushed over. She suddenly felt dizzy and was about to be affected, but then she recovered immediately. Her body released a huge amount of power of faith, expelling the invisible murderous aura from her body. Her eyes were filled with joy as she stared at the ferocious ancient sword. The murderous aura was shocking, exuding the domineering aura of the King of Swords. It was the legendary Emperor Killing Sword. It really was hidden in this secret realm. Without hesitation, the Saint Maiden immediately flashed over and was about to pull the Emperor Killing Sword out of the pool of blood. So you didn't make a move. Instead, he became slightly vigilant. It was rumored that the Emperor Killing Sword had its own intelligence. It would be strange if it could be so easily controlled. Sure enough, there was a sudden splash from the pool of blood. A white, jade-like palm stretched out from it and grasped the Emperor Killing Sword. To be precise, it was the meridians of the Emperor Killing Sword that were connected to the palm. Walala, the pool of blood separated, and a middle-aged man with smooth, jade-like skin stood up from within. There was no light in his eyes. He had a soul, but no consciousness. The jade-like body was exceptionally strong. It should be the body of the Double Crown Emperor. The Saint Maiden's face changed. The Dustless Moon Clan's great deacon, Qing Tian. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. He had always wondered why he hadn't seen a single corpse when so many people had died in the tunnel. Now it seemed that not all of them had died. At least the great deacon of the Dustless Moon Clan was not dead. He was being controlled by the Emperor Killing Sword. No one had ever been able to control the Emperor Killing Sword. It was the only one that could control living beings. Under the control of the Emperor Killing Sword, the great deacon held the sword tightly and slashed at the Saint Maiden. Suddenly, a substantial blood-red sword energy swept across the area. In an instant, the Saint Maiden didn't even have the chance to resist. She was killed on the spot, and not even her soul was left. Her whole body turned into nothingness. Su Yu was alarmed. The power of this blow was no weaker than a full-force blow from the Triple Crown Emperor. With his current abilities, he couldn't resist it unless he used the dragon-shaped necklace. Dongfang Xia had sealed the defense within it, but Su Yu was very reluctant to waste this move. After taking a deep breath, Su Yu did something extremely shocking. He didn't retreat. Instead, he suddenly turned sideways. But his side was flat, as thin as a piece of paper. What was even more shocking was that the piece of paper Su Yu was folded from the waist down to half the height of a person. Then, the piece of paper continued to fold in half. Then it folded again. In a short moment, a living Su Yu was folded into the size of a speck of dust. Finally, when the blood-red sword energy struck, it turned into nothingness. Poof! The blood-red sword energy swept through the void without any resistance. In an instant, tens of thousands of Blood Clan members were killed by the sword. There were only 100,000 Blood Clan members, but half of them were killed by the Emperor Killing Sword. The great deacon Qing Tian's body dimmed visibly, as if the essence of his body had been sucked out. Every time the Emperor Killing Sword used a sword, it depended on the living beings it controlled. The price was the lives of the living beings. After killing 2 people with a single strike, the Emperor Killing Sword whistled, and took the great Deacon Qingtian away. Buzz. Not long after it left, a strange scene appeared. The place where the Saint Maiden had appeared was filled with black light, and the Saint Maiden's body reappeared from nothing. She was unscathed, as if the person who had just been killed was someone else. She looked back in Suyu's direction and frowned slightly. Did he die so easily? I thought he was the Baiwa sect master, but it seems he isn't. Then, with a flash of light, she chased after the Emperor killing sword. She didn't know that a speck of dust had silently landed on her shoulder. It was Suyu, who had turned into nothingness. That move just now was the new use of space that Suyu had comprehended, space folding. He continued to fold the space around him, and finally folded it into nothingness. Unless the enemy's attack could even destroy nothingness, it could not hurt him at all. At this moment, he landed on the Saint Maiden's body and followed her to investigate. The power of the Emperor killing sword was beyond imagination. Occupying the body of a double crown emperor could release the terrible power of a triple crown emperor. He truly didn't dare imagine just how tyrannical the power it released would be if it occupied the body of a three-crown emperor. It was much more difficult to obtain this sword than he had imagined. It would not belong to whoever found it. Therefore, he did not make a move and followed the Saint Maiden. However, this Saint Maiden's divine technique was also beyond Suyu's expectations. He was very sensitive to the soul, and he was very sure that the blow just now had killed the Saint Maiden, and that her body and soul had been destroyed. In the end, she had been strangely resurrected, and even her soul had been restored to its original state. It was really unexpected. It was not a reversal of time. Instead, it was somewhat similar to Suyu's resurrection of the dead. As long as there was a trace of breath left in the world, it could be traced back to the source and resurrected the dead. He really did not know how this Saint Maiden had appeared. Suyu finally understood where the Baiwa sect master's fear of this woman came from. Even the destruction of her body and soul could not completely kill her. Walls could kill her. Fortunately, he had not made a move just now. If he had, it would not have been easy to clean up. The Saint Maiden, whom he had thought could be easily killed, turned out to be so difficult to deal with. He restrained his breath and quietly followed the Saint Maiden. The Saint Maiden's use of the power of faith was extremely exquisite. During battle, she could use it as a divine technique, and when she flew, she could use it as a leap. Although the great Deacon Qingtian walked extremely fast, he did not leave the Saint Maiden behind. After flying for a full half a day, they finally reached the other side of this world. It was a world of blood-red light. Countless pools of blood were embedded in the ground. The blood was tumbling, and one after another, fresh Blood Clan members walked out of them. They were neatly lined up, and there were at least 10 million of them. Compared to the 100,000 Blood Clan members sent before, this was simply a drop in the ocean. The great Deacon Qingtian held the Emperor killing sword in his hand and laid down in the largest pool of blood in the center, leaving only the Emperor killing sword stuck in the blood pool. The Saint Maiden stopped in time, her eyes filled with shock. Where did so many Blood Clan members come from? Suyu, who was on her shoulder, was also extremely shocked. If there really were so many Blood Clan members, how could the mere Daesun clan resist until now? Suddenly, Suyu stared at the countless pools of blood and suddenly realized something. Dustless Moon Clan, you have really done a great deed. Suyu secretly snorted coldly. The Saint Maiden stared at so many Blood Clan members, then glanced at the Emperor killing sword unwillingly and carefully retreated. When she had completely left that space, she frowned. Damn it, I finally found the Emperor killing sword, but there is nothing I can do. There are 10 million Blood Clan members, and I can't get past them no matter what. What should I do? At that moment, a calm voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Why don't we join forces and try? Chapter 1867. Her expression changed abruptly. Someone had appeared beside her without her noticing. And that voice, it's you. Come out. The Saint Lady bellowed. She did not move, but her eyes quickly swept around, looking for Suyu's position. However, she could not sense Suyu's aura, as if he did not exist. What if I don't come out? Suyu teased. The Saint Lady was even more shocked. The voice had clearly come from her right shoulder, but she could not sense his existence at all. Who are you? The Saint Lady felt incredulous. The Emperor-killing sword had not ended this person's life. Even if the Biowest sect leader came in person, he could not be unscathed. Huh? Suyu chuckled and stopped teasing her. A speck of dust floated away from the Saint Lady's shoulder. In front of her incredulous eyes, the speck of dust folded again and again into a complete black-robed man. The Saint Lady immediately retreated 1,000 feet away, looking extremely vigilant. Suyu stood with his hands behind his back and looked at her calmly. Oh, you obviously have an immortal body, but you are still afraid of me? I'm guessing that there's a limit to the number of times you can use your immortal body? Just like resurrection, there was a natural limitation that it could only be used one day at a time. Otherwise, if she could resurrect infinitely, who in the world could subdue her? You don't have to worry about that. Why? Are you not going to kill me? The Saint Lady became more vigilant. Suyu said lightly, As I said, I am cooperating with you. Cooperation? The Saint Lady thought about it. After a while, she said seriously, It is indeed impossible for me to subdue the Emperor-killing sword alone, but can I do it if I cooperate with you? Suyu shook his head gently and stared at the depths of the bloody light. His eyes were solemn. That is not it. With my strength, unless I pay a huge price, it will be difficult to shake the Emperor-killing sword. Then what is the meaning of your cooperation? It is just empty talk. The Saint Lady was a little disappointed. Suyu smiled mysteriously. If you and I are not enough, how about the Daesun clan? The two white emperor puppets in their hands are a rare fighting force. Them? The Saint Lady thought it was ridiculous. Your thoughts are bold and imaginative. Forgive me for being unable to agree with you. The Saintess shook her head and laughed. I'm sure you've seen what the White Sun race has done. They don't even treat us captives as living beings. We're just puppets. What right do we have to convince them to help us obtain the Emperor-killing sword? Not to mention, the Holy Maiden had lost all interest in cooperating with him. The White Sun clan is extremely afraid of the Blood clan. If they really had the determination to fight against the Blood clan, they wouldn't have ended up like this. Trying to borrow their strength is just wishful thinking. The corners of Suyu's mouth curled up into a confident smile, and he said leisurely, Nothing in this world is absolute. They're holed up on an island because they're still holding onto the hope that they can preserve the continuation of their race through forbearance. What if that hope is extinguished? This thought-provoking statement made the Saintess ponder. Why hadn't the Daesun clan annihilated the Blood race, the mortal enemy that threatened their race and fought them to the death? Firstly, the vampires' viciousness and brutality struck fear into their hearts. Secondly, they hadn't been forced into a truly desperate situation. Over the years, the Daesun clan had been like a frog being boiled in warm water. Their population had been reduced little by little until today. If they had had the courage to fight against the Blood race from the very beginning, even if only a small portion of the Daesun clan remained, they would have been able to repopulate and grow stronger over time. It was precisely because they hadn't been forced to the point of burning their boats that they had gradually weakened. Now, they were holed up on an island, no longer having the courage to fight. But now, the Blood race had exploded due to the unexpected actions of the Dustless Moon clan. Their numbers were more than 100 times greater than before. If they attacked, the Daesun clan would have no chance of survival. So, what would happen if they told the Daesun clan about this news? Would they still feel at ease? They would probably be in a state of confusion. The Saintess's eyes lit up. This method could indeed provoke the Daesun clan to attack the Blood race. The idea is good, but what makes you think that the Daesun clan would cooperate with us instead of letting the two white emperor puppets subdue us and continue to enslave us? The Saintess shook her head lightly. Based on her understanding of the Daesun clan over the past year, they were definitely not good people. If they really went back, they would only be captured again. And would the Daesun clan, who had seen their true strength, be able to control them as easily as before? It would be extremely difficult for them to break free from the Daesun clan shackles. Ha! Just because I can make the Daesun clan leave this world, they will definitely be willing to cooperate with me. The Saintess was shocked. You know of a way to leave this world? Of course. The Saintess stared at Suyu, her eyes filled with surprise. She had almost forgotten that the black-robed man in front of her was the only person who had come to this world during a non-full moon. Could it be that he really knew of a way? She was completely moved. If you are willing to bring me out, I can give you benefits you can't even imagine. As the Saintess of the Moon-worshipping cult, she was indeed qualified to do so. What I want is the Emperor Killing Sword. Can you give it to me? Suyu said with a faint smile. The Saintess's expression darkened. Except for that. Haha, so you don't have enough bargaining chips. Suyu smiled faintly. You should stay here and help me get the Emperor Killing Sword. We can discuss how to distribute it in the future. Whether or not they could subdue the Emperor Killing Sword was uncertain. It was still too early to discuss how to distribute it. All right, I don't want to give up until the last moment. The Saintess nodded. Shall we return to the Daesun clan now? Suyu said calmly. There is no hurry. Let them exhaust some of their people first. Only when they have tasted pain will they cherish this opportunity. The Saintess did not refute this. If they returned early and helped them repel the Blood Clan, not only would the Daesun clan not be grateful, they would even subdue them and bind them as captives. Only by making them lose more White Sun clan warriors would they be willing to cherish the chance to leave this world if they felt the urgency of the extinction of their race. Suyu's thoughts were exactly the same as the Saintess, and he had no sympathy for the Daesun clan. When they treated their captives like grass, they could not blame the captives for treating their lives as worthless. They stayed behind and carefully investigated the nearby information. They even recorded many images of this place. Half a day later, when the whole world began to darken, the killing that had lasted for an entire day gradually came to an end. The ground was littered with the corpses of the Blood Clan, but the corpses of the Daesun clan's warriors were also piled up like a mountain. Many captives had perished along with them, including the captive of the double-crowned emperor, who had also been killed by 3 extremely powerful Blood Clan warriors in this battle. The final victory belonged to the Daesun clan, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. The goateed elder's robe was covered in blood, and his eyes were still tired and dim. How's the casualty report? The goateed elder asked hoarsely. Behind him were his 2 daughters, Ba Yu and Ba Feng. His 3rd daughter, Ba Shui, had died. They had watched helplessly as a powerful Blood Clan rushed into their midst and snatched Ba Shui away. Then, all that was left was an unforgettable scream. Ba Yu was still alive, but she was not much better off. Half of her arm was gone. Moreover, unlike the rich divine energy of the outside world, which could be absorbed at any time to heal injuries, this world was abnormally dry, and the divine energy was extremely sparse. It was an extravagant hope for them to be like the divine kings of heaven and earth in the outside world. They could only rely on weak medicinal herbs to slowly heal themselves, not daring to waste any divine energy. Ba Feng was not much better off. Her sister had only lost an arm in order to help her block that attack, but she was still wounded in the abdomen, and blood flowed continuously. Hearing this, Ba Yu held the latest wanted list in her hands, and her eyes were extremely gloomy. 60,000 warriors, only 20,000 are left. The other 40,000 have all died in battle. Ba Yu said in a low voice. Among the surviving 20,000 warriors, nearly half of them were seriously injured. To be precise, there were only 10,000 warriors who could continue fighting. Just 10,000. They and the 2 white emperor puppets were the last hope of the old, weak women and children. The goateed elder trembled. Only this much left? With their speed of reproduction, it was difficult to guarantee that they could cultivate another 40,000 warriors in the next 10 years. By then, there would be another large-scale attack by the Blood Clan. No, perhaps it would be 20 years later. The Blood Clan had organized 2 large-scale attacks every 3 years, so the casualties must be extremely heavy. 20 years was enough for them to recover part of their strength. How many healing spiritual items are there in the clan's storehouse? The goateed elder regained his hope and asked energetically. Ba Yu was not so optimistic. The healing resources that we have plundered from the storage rings of the captives over the years are almost used up. There are only enough to treat the wounds of 3,000 people. I'm afraid the injuries of the remaining 7,000 can only be slowly healed by their physiques. With the density of the divine energy here, how many people could really rely on their physiques to slowly recover? Many of the people would slowly die from their increasingly serious injuries. The goateed elder had a sorrowful look in his eyes. He sighed and said, "Give priority to the more powerful warriors." Priority was given based on the level of cultivation, not the severity of injuries. This meant that those who did not receive the medicine would die even faster. It's all the fault of those 2 captives. If they were here, the casualties would not have been so heavy. Bayu shifted the blame to Su Yu and the Saint Maiden. With the strength of those 2, they might have been able to reduce the casualties of many people. Right at that moment, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded in the sky above the island, which was filled with a depressing atmosphere. "Oh, it was the Blood Clan who killed your warriors. I will not take the blame." A speck of dust appeared out of thin air. Who else could it be but Su Yu? Bayu was immediately enraged. His murderous aura was thick. "How dare you come back? I was worried about not having a place to find you." Father quickly summoned the White Emperor puppet. With the shocking strength that Su Yu had displayed, only the White Emperor puppet could completely subdue him. Chapter 1868. With the Bayu sect master's lifelong collection, there were many healing resources. The old man with the goatee and Bayu were delighted. Bayu's eyes flashed as he sneered. "I don't know what Luo Yunyang is doing, but he didn't hand over your space storage device. But it's not too late now." "Huh?" Su Yu laughed meaningfully. "You can take away my belongings, but can you take away the way out of this space?" Suddenly, the old man with the goatee and Bayu's expressions changed drastically. Leave the space? Had they thought about it for countless years? Of course they had, and they had even tried. Generation after generation of people had tried to leave this space, only to be met with disappointment again and again, and finally despair. They had interrogated all the people from the foreign civilizations who had accidentally entered this space, and the answer they had received was that they had been summoned during the full moon and had no idea how to return. Over time, they no longer had any hopes of leaving this place. Now, hearing a captive so confident that he had a way to leave, how could they not be excited? "White Emperor puppet, capture him." The old man with the goatee immediately ordered. 2 terrifying auras shot out from the underground space. So he was shrouded in them, unafraid. He said calmly, "If I were you, I wouldn't be so reckless. What if I erased the memory of the way to leave? Wouldn't that destroy our last glimmer of hope?" Bayu could not bear to see a captive negotiating conditions. "Father, don't listen to him," he said coldly. "Capture him first, then determine the truth." But the old man with the goatee hesitated for a moment, then shouted, "Stop for now." Suddenly, the 2 puppets' auras disappeared. "Father," Bayu said, dissatisfied. "Shut up." The old man with the goatee's eyes were calm as he scolded. He turned to look at Su Yu, his eyes calm and deep. "Since you dared to appear before us, I believe you must have something to rely on. That something to rely on is the way to leave, right? How can you convince us that the way to leave is real?" Su Yu looked calm. "It's simple, because I'm the only one from the foreign civilization who did not come during the full moon." Hearing this, the old man's pupils shrank. "You are not. The Dark Star civilization's full moon period was not strict, and there were many influences. Sometimes it would be half a month or a full moon, and sometimes it would be a month. The people there could not confirm whether the newcomer had come during the full moon. Hence, the old man with the goatee assumed that Su Yu had fallen in during the full moon and did not interrogate him. Now that the other party had said it himself, he was naturally shocked. "What proof do you have? Who knows if you're lying to us?" Bayu didn't believe him. Su Yu crossed his arms in front of his chest and said disdainfully, "Proof? I don't need to prove anything to you. You have no choice but to believe me." Bayu sneered. The goateed old man's expression gradually darkened. Outer realm living being, you are testing my patience. Don't think that I won't kill you just because you're a little stronger." Without uttering a single word, Suyu casually threw out several pieces of jade that had recorded images on them. With a point in his hand, all of the jade pieces split open and released a large mass of light, projecting a clear image into the sky. There were tens of millions of blood tribe members gathered together, and countless blood pools of various sizes were still continuously producing blood tribe members. That number caused the goateed elder and Bayou to gasp, unable to believe their eyes. 100,000 bloodlings were enough to cause the White Sun clan to face the threat of extinction. 10 million. There was no suspense. Even if he had another White Emperor puppet, there would be no suspense at all. "That's why I said that you have no choice but to believe me," Suyu said calmly. The goateed old man and Bayou shuddered. The former pondered for a long time and said, "Do you really have a way to leave?" Suyu said calmly, "At least I can't think of a reason to lie to you in front of such a large blood clan. They were all going to die, so what was the point of lying to them?" The goateed elder said solemnly, "Then what do you want? Let me borrow 2 of the White Emperor's puppets to bring you out of this space," Suyu said, clasping his hands behind his back. "Impossible." The goateed elder and Moonhee Gemin both refused. They were the protective talismans of the White Sun clan. How could they hand them over to outsiders? "Then just wait for your deaths," Suyu said calmly, then turned around and left. Bayu's face turned cold. "You're not allowed to leave. Stay here." She was about to attack, but before she could do so, she was stopped by the goateed elder. His eyes flashed as he looked at Suyu. "Let's think about it." Suyu sighed. "I don't understand what you have to think about." "Fine. We only have 3 days." As he spoke, he descended without a care in the world, leisurely sitting on a rooftop with a beautiful view. At the same time, there was a flash of light beside him, and the female captive who had escaped came to his side. The 2 of them did not care about the White Sun clan at all, swaggering around and enjoying themselves. Bayou clenched his teeth, wanting nothing more than to imprison them. They actually dared to stay? Did they not care about them at all? "Let's go gather the higher-ups of the White Sun clan for a discussion." The goateed elder's emotions were fluctuating. He looked at Suyu and Moonhee Gemin, then said, "Also, serve the 2 of them well. Do not neglect them. From now on, they are no longer captives, but honored guests of the White Sun clan." They arrived at the White Sun clan's secret conference room. The higher-ups of the clan had gathered together. The goateed elder announced the matter to the public. Knowing that there were still millions of Blood Clan members waiting to fight, everyone's expressions turned ugly. "Now, I want to hear everyone's opinion. Should we hand the White Emperor puppet over to those 2? Or," the goateed elder said, but he realized that he had no other choice. What else could he do but trust them? Exterminate the clan. Then what are we waiting for? Capture him and torture him, a fierce White Sun tribesman said without hesitation. But the rest of the White Sun clan members were much calmer. At the moment of certain death, who would care about torture? Moreover, the other party could erase this memory with a thought and die with everyone. What would they do? They could only watch and wait for the Blood Clan's army to arrive. They had no other choice but to trust him. The meeting was silent. The goateed elder sighed. It was as Suyu had said. What was there to consider? They did not even have a choice. Looks like everyone is in agreement. Then, hand the White Emperor puppet over to him in exchange for a chance for the White Sun clan to leave this dangerous world. On a sunny rooftop, Bayou widened her almond-shaped eyes and stared at Suyu as if she wanted to eat him alive. She then shouted, "Say that again? Where are you going to take us away?" Suyu rubbed his ears, which were ringing from the yelling, and said calmly, "What's the rush? If I could leave this space so easily, why would I bother waiting here?" Banyue's chest heaved with anger, her fists clenching. On the other hand, the goateed elder's expression was calm. This was not unexpected. "Are you sure you can take us away in 9 days?" the goateed elder asked. Suyu nodded seriously. "Yes, 9 days at the slowest, 5 days at the fastest." The goateed elder pondered for a long time, then nodded slightly. He took out a white stone, It's shaped similar to the divine white sunstone. This is the divine stone that controls the white emperor puppet. Refine this item, and the white emperor puppet will listen to you, the goateed elder said. The goateed elder said, the other white emperor puppet will be given to you after you take us away. Suyu was the one who had profited, so he naturally had no objections. Deal, Suyu said. Banyue was indignant. Also, you said you had healing resources. Give it to me. She acted as if it was a matter of course. She was clearly used to being a censor. Suyu looked at her calmly. You want it? Sure, beg me. How dare you? Banyue glared at him. Suyu laughed coldly. Remember your current status. You are the one asking me for help, not the other way around. He didn't have the slightest bit of respect for this kind of ignorant person. You. Banyue was slightly angry. Unexpectedly, after a moment of silence, she asked, how do you want me to beg for resources? Oh, she was so cold to the captives, yet she was so loving to her people. So you thought for a moment. It's simple. Make a deal. Give me the rest of the captives, and I will take care of all the injuries of your people. Deal. Almost as soon as Suyu said this, Banyue rushed to make a deal, as if she was afraid that Suyu would go back on his word. There were not many captives left anyway, and they were all seriously injured, even more troublesome than the injuries of her people. They were going to die sooner or later. Handing them over to Suyu would give her some benefits. Suyu nodded. Deal. Banyue was delighted. She rolled her eyes at Suyu. You be Astra-starred. You're not bad. Thank you for the compliment, Suyu said calmly. Before long, the remaining 1,000 puppets were all standing in front of Suyu. He glanced around and was surprised to find that the Dark Moon tribesman who had first released them was not dead. He was extremely lucky to have survived with his meager cultivation. Now, the group of captives was filled with resentment. They glared at the White Sun tribesmen, wishing they could bite them to death. Out of 10,000 captives, only these defeated soldiers were left. How could they not be resentful? When he noticed that Suyu, a human, was sitting in the distinguished guest hall of the White Sun clan, with the famous gray-robed female captive on his left and the famous supervisor Hanyu on his right, he was startled. They looked at Suyu with disdain. Traitor, you've acknowledged a traitor as your father. Suyu said disapprovingly. If I were you, I would shut up and observe the situation. Banyue laughed coldly. You captives, listen up. From today onwards, he is your master. From now on, you are no longer under the jurisdiction of the White Sun tribe. All of a sudden, the expressions of the captives changed. They were filled with shock and disbelief. The White Sun tribe had released them. No, they had handed them over to Suyu, who was also an extraterrestrial creature. Suyu looked at them calmly. In other words, from now on, your life and death are in my hands. Chapter 1869. The puppets looked at each other with surprise in their eyes. Those who had been full of disdain and had spoken rudely shut their mouths even more obediently. The situation seemed to be a little tricky. If you don't, then listen to me. Suyu glanced at them and calmly threw out a piece of jade, projecting a large number of images. Tens of millions of Blood Clan soldiers were ready to set off. They were aggressive and could arrive at any time. Seeing so many Blood Clan soldiers, the faces of all the captives changed dramatically. They were pale, terrified, and trembling. Where did so many Blood Clan soldiers come from? In the past, there were at most 100,000 of them, but now there are hundreds of times more. Deep despair reverberated in their hearts like a bell. They thought they were extremely lucky to have survived the large-scale attack of the Blood Clan. Who would have thought that they would still die? Among the tens of millions of Blood Clan soldiers, who could survive? As you can see, whether it's the Day-Sun clan or you will all die, Suyu said with certainty. Unless you are willing to listen to me, not only will you survive, but you will also be able to leave this world and be free forever. As soon as he said that, the captives were in an uproar. Leave? How can we leave? The Day-Sun clan has spent so much effort and still failed to leave this place. How are you going to take us away? Human, are you deceiving us? One of the half-step monarch realm existences questioned. Suyu sat steadily on the VIP seat and looked at them coldly. With your current status as captives, Do I have any reason to deceive you? I could decide your life and death with a single thought. The captives were stunned. Now, they were Su Yu's captives. Then can you guarantee? The half-emperor captive asked again. Su Yu cut him off expressionlessly. I can't guarantee that everyone will leave alive. I can only guarantee that I will take those who are alive with me. Of course, they had to be alive. Then what do you need us to do? The half-emperor asked. Are you going to fight against the tens of millions of Blood Clan soldiers? Su Yu shook his head lightly. Of course not. With the absolute difference in strength, letting you fight is like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I need you to do something else. It was not to fight against the Blood Clan. All the captives heaved a sigh of relief. After a short pause, Su Yu glanced at their exhausted divine powers. With a wave of his hand, all kinds of resources for restoring divine powers were placed in front of him. Not only were the captives envious, but even Ba Yu's eyes lit up. If it weren't for the fact that his father was present, he might have rushed over to snatch it. Merits will be rewarded. Mistakes will be punished. Su Yu said calmly, I don't need to punish those who are passive. I'll leave you in this space forever, and the Blood Clan will punish you. Those who are active and those who make contributions will receive resources to recover their divine power. This time, the captives were completely excited. Showing kindness and authority was the way to rule. If there was only punishment, it would be like how the captives treated the White Sun clan, causing them to harbor resentment and betray them at the last minute. Only with kindness and kindness would they be willing to do things for him. Lord, please instruct us. Knowing that it wasn't anything difficult, everyone heaved a sigh of relief, and some even volunteered. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly, and he looked at a member of the Dark Moon clan who was rubbing his palms and itching to try. However, his cultivation was too low, and he was pushed to the back by many who volunteered. He stood on his tiptoes and shouted, Lord, it's me, I am. Don't press my face. Don't block me. I know you. Su Yu waved his sleeves and pulled the person out from among the captives. The member of the Dark Moon clan was stunned, and then he bowed and said joyfully, Senior, it is my honor that you still recognize me. What's your name? Su Yu asked calmly. The member of the Dark Moon clan replied immediately, Senior, I am Wang Dahu. Su Yu sized up his skinny body, which really didn't match the name Dahu. Well, I now appoint you as the general manager of all the captives. You have full authority to distribute the volunteers and convey orders for me. Ba Yu frowned and said discontentedly, asking a low-level creature like him to do such an important thing. You might as well hire me. Some of the captives were also full of contempt and disdain. Lord, I used to be a peak master in the Heavenly Palace, and I am very familiar with management. I believe you will be satisfied. I'm also recommending myself. I used to be the manager of the 8th Cavern under Palace Master Luochen of the Yunwu Divine Mountain, one of the 10 great influences. I believe no one can compare to me in terms of management. The latter was even more influential. He was actually from the Yunwu Divine Mountain, one of the 10 great influences. On the other hand, Wang Dahu's low cultivation did not seem to be of any use at all. Su Yu sized him up with a faint smile. What do you say? He chose Wang Dahu because they were familiar with each other, and he could be trusted. On the other hand, he didn't quite believe that Wang Dahu had survived by pure luck. When Su Yu drew his sword, he brought him and Fatty Luo into the center of the Blood Clan. Fatty Luo died, but he was still alive. It was impossible to say that there was nothing special about him. Wang Dahu was doubted. He gritted his teeth and snorted. What's so great about the Yunwu Divine Mountain? I am from the Holy Land. The term Holy Land existed in almost all of the 10 great influences. The moon-worshipping cult's main altar was also a holy land in the eyes of the moon-worshipping cult's disciples. However, there was only one person in the entire Dark Star civilization who could call itself a holy land without any prefixes. The Holy Moon Altar. The guardian of the Dark Star civilization, the mythical existence of the 4-star civilization, the King of Darkness. He lived in seclusion at the Holy Moon Altar, ignoring the affairs of the world. He would only appear when the Dark Star civilization was under attack. The place where he lived was called the Holy Moon Altar. The people of the Dark Moon clan had another name, the Holy Land. Humph! How dare you call yourself a member of the Holy Land? From what I know, a member of the Holy Land must at least be a divine warrior of heaven and earth. Stop playing tricks here. If you are a member of the Holy Land, I am still the King of Darkness. Wang Dahu clenched his fists angrily. I have no reason to lie to you. If you don't believe me, take a look. He tore off his shirt, revealing a huge mark on his chest. The mark of an ordinary mountain surrounded by clouds, and mist was quietly rising and falling as he breathed. Shreds of strange energy came from within the mountain, as if it was a real mountain. Ah, the Holy Moon Altar. It is the aura of the real Holy Moon Altar. The crowd exclaimed. That mark, that aura, the familiarity of the creatures of the Dark Star civilization from their bloodline. There was no doubt that he was a member of the Holy Land. Although Suyu had expected this, he was surprised by his identity. He was from the Holy Land. It was rumored that everyone in the Holy Land was personally selected by the King of Darkness, and he personally bestowed the mark. Wang Dahua, a small member of the Dark Moon clan with the cultivation of a bronze overlord, was actually a member of the Holy Land. It was really unexpected. Suyu's eyes gleamed. How could a member of the Holy Land be transported here? There was something strange about it. But now is not the time to ask. He looked around at the crowd. Do you have any objections? The way the captives looked at Wang Dahu was no longer the same. There was a hint of respect in their eyes, even more so than Suyu's. If there are no objections, then do as I say, Suyu said lightly. Please instruct us, my lord. Suyu glanced at the resources on the ground. Dao, distribute these to everyone first to temporarily replenish some of your divine power. The subsequent resources will depend on whether you are willing to work hard. Their resources had long been plundered by the Daesun clan. How could there be any left? The spirit herbs that they had disdained in the past were now treasures in their eyes. One could imagine how excited they were when they distributed the resources. Bayu was equally excited. Her eyes were red, as if she was distributing her things. Her heart was bleeding. After distributing the resources, Suyu waited for them to rest and recover some of their divine power. Then he said, what I want you to do is very simple. First, find out the latest movements of the Blood Clan and pay close attention to their every move. Inform Wang Dahu of any information, and he will inform me. Second, I want you to scatter across the various islands and look for some kind of stone door. If you find a stone door, inform me immediately. The stone door that Suyu had come from, he had gone back to look for it. It had mysteriously disappeared, as if it had never been there. He did not feel anything else. If the stone door had always existed, there was no reason that the Daesun clan would not have discovered it after so many years. The stone door should have only appeared for the moment when it was opened and then disappeared again. Sending some of the captives to look for the stone door was to keep track of the situation of the Dustless Moon clan. That's all. The captives were surprised. These requirements were too simple. Suyu shook his head slightly. Of course not. You also need to spread the news and let every creature of the Daesun clan know that the Emperor Killing Sword is in the Blood Clan army. Bayu's eyes flashed. What's so difficult about that? Let me do it. Gather all the people and tell them, as long as you are willing to give me all these resources. Her eyes were shining as she stared greedily at Wang Dahu as he put away the remaining bottles of resources. Suyu stared at her calmly. You can't tell them so clearly. What I want is to spread news and let everyone know the inside story in different ways. Although they did not understand Suyu's intentions, they certainly liked a simple task. More than 1,000 captives dispersed in an uproar. Some of them monitored the movements of the Blood Clan army. Some of them searched for the so-called stone door. Others were responsible for spreading the news of the Emperor Killing Sword on the island. Suyu seemed to be enjoying the preferential treatment of the Daesun clan. In fact, every nerve in his body was stretched taut. 2 days had passed. Wang Dahu, who thought he had gotten an easy job, was so tired that he was panting. He did not even have time to rest. This was because there were messages from different captives almost every moment, and most of them were related to the Blood Clan. The number of the Blood Clan has increased by 5 million in 2 days. The number of blood pools has increased by 30%. The Emperor Killing Sword is not moving at all. A series of reports came flying in like pieces of paper. The Blood Clan was growing stronger at a rapid pace. Chapter 1870. Su, can you really leave this world in a few more days? Why you could not remain calm. Su nodded calmly. Yes. Can you think of a way to bring it forward? Otherwise, if the Blood Clan continues to grow, we will be in even more danger. Su did not care. Are the Blood Clan not in danger now? 10 million can wipe us out, and 15 million can still wipe us out. What's the difference? What we should be concerned about now is not the Blood Clan's outbreak, but when they will attack. Su Yu's eyes shone with a profound light. Continuing to gather troops was not an aimless attack. Their actions seemed to be controlled by the Emperor Killing Sword. But what did the Emperor Killing Sword want? If it really wanted to wipe them out, it did not need to continue gathering troops. It could simply command 1 million Blood Clan members to wipe out the Whitsun clan. It did not seem like it was targeting the Daysun clan or Su Yu and the others. Instead, it seemed like it was dealing with another extremely powerful threat. But who could it be? Could it be Master Bao Kuan, who was about to come here? It did not seem like it. If that was the case, there would be no need for so many powerful troops. Master Bao Kuan was powerful as a 3-crown emperor, but he was no match for the millions of Blood Clan members. Who was the threat posed by the Emperor Killing Sword? Amidst his chaotic thoughts, Wang Dahu suddenly sent a message. One of the captives on an abandoned island sensed a spatial fluctuation, as if something was about to appear. Su Yu's expression changed slightly. The old man with a goatee, Ba Yu, and Ba Shui were all stunned. Space fluctuation? The space here was extremely stable. How could there be a space fluctuation? Su Yu had already disappeared from his original spot. The old man with a goatee said, "Quick, let's follow him." The 3 of them followed him. The holy maiden was left pondering, staring at the place where Su Yu had fought, lost in thought. The next moment, Su Yu appeared on an island that had been ruined for hundreds of years. This used to be one of the important settlements of the Whitsun clan, but it had been destroyed in an attack by the Blood Clan. All that was left were endless ruins, a testament to its former glory. Without needing to contact the captive, Su Yu, who was extremely sensitive to space energy, quickly sensed the space fluctuation and teleported over. "Greetings, Lord," the captive said excitedly. Su Yu nodded and looked over. Indeed, there were traces of space energy gathering on a book, condensing into a tiny vortex. The vortex was slowly enlarging and expanding. Su Yu used his transparent eye to examine one of them. Sure enough, he found the stone door that he had come out from. It was him. It seemed that the door did not have a fixed location and appeared at random. This should be the 6th door. The Dustless Moon sect was about to completely break through that vortex. In less than 2 days, he should be able to completely penetrate it, which was faster than expected. It seemed like Master Bao Kuan had personally made a move. Otherwise, it would have taken at least 5 days to get through. Su Yu's eyes flickered. Get ready. The goateed elder and the tyrant's sisters, who had followed him here, looked puzzled. Prepared for what? Moon Domineering asked in surprise. Is this spatial fluctuation related to the method of leaving? Su Yu nodded lightly. Yes, but right now, we should be more concerned about the blood breeds. I think they might be preparing to attack. Almost as soon as Su Yu's voice faded away, Wang Dahu sent an urgent message. Senior, this is bad. The latest news from the surveillance team says that all the blood pools of the Blood Tribe are shrinking rapidly. The Clear Sky Great Deacon, who is holding the Emperor Killer Sword, has appeared and is sitting cross-legged. The Blood Tribe army has become irritable and restless, and they might attack at any time. Hearing that, the goateed elder's expression changed drastically. The tyrant's sisters' faces also turned pale. It was finally here. They all looked at Su Yu and wondered, how did he manage to predict the future? Of course, Su Yu would not tell them the true origin of the Blood Tribe. This world was only so big, so where did the endless Blood Tribe come from? It probably had something to do with the 6 vortexes The vortexes strangled the people who entered them, and their flesh and blood were absorbed into this world. In the blood pools, they were reformed into bloodthirsty creatures that devoured the Daesun clan. In order to open the vortexes, the dustless moon sect forced tens of millions of creatures to fill the 6 vortexes. Their flesh and blood were all transported here, which was why there were tens of millions of blood tribe members. Continue to monitor this place. When a stone door appears, inform me immediately. Suyu instructed and immediately returned to the Daesun clan's island. He walked around the island casually, listening in on the conversations of the people around him. Have you heard? It turns out that the thing called the Emperor Killing Sword is controlling the blood tribe. It's really despicable. Hey, you heard this rumor too? Yes, I heard it from a soldier. Oh, I heard it from a few captives' furtive conversations. What a coincidence. You guys know about it too. Wherever Suyu walked, he more or less heard about the Emperor Killing Sword. Now, it was known by everyone. After understanding everything, Suyu returned to the roof and sat down beside the Saint Lady. How is it? The Saint Lady asked. Suyu said lightly, everything is ready, except for the final push. His eyes were calm, as if everything was under his control. The Saint Lady stared at him and fell into deep thought. Time passed slowly. The people were getting more and more anxious. Everyone knew that the 15 million blood tribe army was ready to go, and they would sweep the whole world like a flood at any time, wiping out all the creatures. Even if the captives were not rewarded, they were still very serious about gathering information. This was especially true regarding the Blood Clan. Almost every hour, the latest information would arrive. Wang Dahu was exhausted beyond words. He gritted his teeth and continued to deliver the information to Suyu in an orderly manner. At this moment, everyone's hopes were on Suyu. He was the only one who could lead everyone out of this world and escape from this place. But Suyu did nothing. He was just leisurely enjoying the last moments of his life. Even the goateed elder could no longer sit still. It's already been 4 days. Has the passage to leave still not been opened? Suyu did not speak. At this moment, dozens of messages were sent to Wang Dahu at the same time. His face was as pale as a sheet, and he trembled as he reported a despairing piece of news. Elder, the great Deacon Qing Tian stood up with the Emperor Killing Sword in his hand. He has ordered the Blood Tribe to advance. Suyu's eyes flickered, and his gaze became deep and profound. After sitting in meditation for 3 days, he finally stood up slowly. Pass on the order. For the first time, he issued an order to everyone. Other than the captives who are monitoring the Blood Tribe, everyone else is to head to the Maple Forest Island. The Maple Forest Island was the island where the space ripples had appeared. The goateed elder's expression changed. No, this white stone city has all sorts of restrictions left behind by our ancestors. We can still resist by relying on this city. If we reach the deserted island, we will lose our final barrier. Suyu stared at him coldly. In front of millions of Blood Tribe members, that pitiful restriction is as good as nothing. Listen to my orders. Don't make me repeat myself a second time. The goateed elder froze, then clenched his teeth. Everyone from the White Sun clan, listen to his orders from now on. All of you are to leave the island. Take as much as you can. However, at that moment, Suyu said, wait. No one is to take anything from the island. Other than the clothes on your body, put down all your belongings. What? Where are the resources? Put them down. The treasures passed down by our ancestors. Put it down too. The goateed elder stared at the center of the island. Everything else can be put down, but the white sunstone left behind by our ancestors cannot be taken away. We cannot let the Blood Tribe taint that stone. So you looked at him indifferently. Do you want to live or die? Do not question my orders. Otherwise, you will bear the consequences. The cold warning made the goateed elder tremble with anger. He could not understand why he could not take anything away. What was Suyu thinking? But since they had come to this, what other choice did they have? They could only trust Suyu to the end. He stared at Suyu deeply. Fine. I will risk the crime of disobeying our ancestors and listen to your orders. But if we cannot survive this ordeal, The one who will kill you will not be the blood tribe, but me. They had given everything to believe in Suyu. But if he did not get the answer he wanted, then he would kill Suyu at all costs to avenge the deaths of his clansmen. Whatever, Suyu calmly said. The goateed elder no longer hesitated. All clansmen, put down everything you have and evacuate to the Maple Forest Island. There must be no hesitation. The people of the White Sun clan might not completely obey Suyu's words, but they were respectful to their leader. Even the storage devices on their bodies were reluctantly put down. Apart from the clothes they had brought with them, they did not take anything from the island. Following that, they left the final fortress one after another, heading for the defenseless Maple Forest Island. On the island, the sturdy underground world that they had excavated for hundreds of years was also completely abandoned. Bayou stood in the sky, watching the scene with a sad expression. Generations of planning had been abandoned in the end. Was it wise and correct for them to choose to believe in Suyu? While they were retreating, the Blood Tribe was charging forward at an unprecedented speed. Their goal was clear, heading straight for the island. Half a day later, a boundless line of blood spread across the horizon, crashing down with a force that could shake the heavens and the earth. The empty White Sun City was like a speck of dust in the face of this terrifying wave, about to be destroyed at any moment. Standing on a Maple Forest Island, the White Sun clan and all the retreating captives watched the scene of despair with nervous expressions. Such a massive blood tribe was not something they could contend with. If they really tried to resist, only death awaited them. Rumble! Everyone's ears were shaken by the movement of the blood tribe. It seemed to be stomping on their hearts, causing them to tremble uncontrollably. Could they really survive? Everyone's eyes were filled with despair. They could not see any possibility of hope. The blood tribe had no intention of stopping, and they were closing in on White Sun City in an instant. Chapter 1871. Seeing the Blood Clan approaching, everyone could not help but retreat. It's over. It's really over. Some people had already closed their eyes, not daring to watch. Their minds were filled with the horrifying image of the ferocious Blood Clan devouring them. Many old and weak women and children could not help but weep. The goateed elder and the boss sisters still saw the hope of leaving Suyu. Their eyes were filled with anger and murderous intent. They had trusted the wrong person, but slowly, the goateed elder discovered that something was wrong. Endless Blood Clan members were surging toward the island where Daesun City was. Compared to them, the island was as small as a speck of dust, inconspicuous. However, it was that small island that was able to hold off the 15 million terrifying Blood Clan members. Yes, that's right. The Blood Clan had stopped. The old man with the goatee could not believe his eyes, and the tyrant's sisters also revealed looks of shock and bewilderment. Gradually, many Daesun people also noticed the abnormality and were extremely surprised. What's going on? Why did the Blood Clan stop? Is there something special about Maple Forest Island that prevents them from seeing us? That shouldn't be the case. If Maple Forest Island really had such a special concealment ability, how could the people on this island be discovered and devoured by the Blood Clan? Did the Blood Clan discover us? But why didn't they attack us? The goateed elder looked at the calm Suyu in shock. Suyu's face was calm and composed, without the slightest hint of abnormality. It was as if he had already predicted everything. What do you know? The goateed elder asked. Suyu shook his head. I've only been here for a few days. What can I know? I'm just guessing something. Guessing? The goateed elder felt incredulous and asked nervously, Can you tell me the truth? I don't know the truth. I only know that 100,000 Blood Clan members could completely annihilate the Daesun people. Why send 15 million soldiers? Suyu said slowly, Perhaps the real target of the Blood Clan was never you Daesun people, but something else. It seemed that Suyu's guess was completely accurate. The tens of millions of Blood Clan members had long discovered the Daesun people on Maple Forest Island. However, they turned a blind eye to it. Instead, they gradually formed an encirclement surrounding the entire White Sun City. Seeing this scene, the goateed old man was completely convinced. He said in shock, They want the last island of the White Sun clan? How could that be? What's on the island that's worth them paying such a price for? Su Yu's eyes shone with a profound light. The answer will be revealed soon. Hualala. Countless vampires surged into the city like a tsunami, destroying everything in its path. The underground space that took several generations to create was completely destroyed in the blink of an eye. All the beautiful buildings were reduced to ashes. All the blood tides surrounded the central square of the island from all directions. That was the holy land of the White Sun clan, where the White Sun divine stone left behind by the ancestors of the White Sun clan was enshrined. For millions of years, the White Sun Godstone had remained motionless, accepting the worship of its people. They prayed to them, hoping to be protected by their ancestors. However, this illusory wish was not heard by the ancestors, so the White Sun clan gradually declined until it was on the verge of extinction. The god's rock that was being worshipped by the others remained unchanged, until the blood tide was within 1,000 feet of them. A shocking scene appeared. The White Sun divine stone moved on its own. A dazzling white light suddenly erupted from the White Sun divine stone, like a blazing sun close at hand. The world, which was already bright and dazzling, was now so bright that ordinary people could not open their eyes. They all closed their eyes in pain. Even a peak overlord could not withstand such an extreme white light, closing their eyes in pain. Only a few people could endure it and see the truth of the island through the white light. The goateed old man was one of them, and Su Yu was another. The ancestors have shown themselves. The goateed old man's eyes were filled with a layer of green light. He could clearly see the White Sun divine stone fly up on its own, circling in midair. The powerful white light that it continuously released had a destructive power. All the vampires who had invaded the island were instantly burned by the white light, leaving nothing behind. The island was suddenly emptied. No less than 80,000 vampires were killed in an instant. The goateed old man, the boss sisters, and the White Sun clansmen were horrified. A casual strike had wiped out 80,000 vampires? Was the White Sun divine stone that powerful? But why had it not shown itself to protect the White Sun clansmen? As one wave of vampires was destroyed, another wave of vampires surged in like a tide, rolling toward the White Sun divine stone. But just as it neared 1,000 feet, the White Sun divine stone once again burst forth with a terrifying white light, destroying the entire island of vampires. Not a single one was spared, but there were so many vampires. A mere 80,000 vampires were like a drop of water. Every time a drop was evaporated, countless vampires would surge forward. Hence, under the dazed gazes of the White Sun clansmen, the White Sun divine stone emitted wave after wave of white light, destroying all the vampires. Both sides seemed to have fallen into an endless cycle. The entire process lasted for an entire day. When night fell, out of the 15 million vampires, only 5 million were left. The rest of the vampires were all purified by the terrifying white light of the White Sun divine stone. The goateed old man was already numb, his eyes filled with absent-mindedness and deep thought. At that moment, he was certain of Su Yu's words. Those vampires had really come for the White Sun divine stone. For many years, the vampires had launched attacks of all sizes to find the White Sun divine stone. They had also conveniently devoured the White Sun clan. It could be said that it was the existence of the White Sun divine stone that caused the gradual decline of the White Sun clan. He finally understood why his ancestor had left behind his last words, telling them to give the White Sun divine stone to the extraterrestrial beings. It was because his ancestor had known from the start that this divine stone would bring endless disasters to the White Sun clan. What was laughable was that in order to deal with the disasters, not only did the White Sun clan not increase the number of divine stones, but they imprisoned all the extraterrestrial beings that came here to deal with the disasters. In the end, the disaster of the vampires became more and more severe, to the point where the clan was on the verge of extinction. They had been taught a lesson in blood for going against their ancestors' last words. I see. The goateed old man sighed softly. He had been wrong from the start. If he had given the white sun divine stone to the extraterrestrial beings, thinking of this, he felt some remorse in his heart, but he still comforted himself with a sliver of hope. So what if he gave it to the extraterrestrial beings? He could not leave this place with the divine stone, and the vampires would eventually invade. What was the difference? Thinking of this, he no longer felt guilty as he stared at the white sun divine stone. I did not expect the item left behind by our ancestor to be able to restrain the vampires. It looks like our crisis can be resolved. The goateed old man stroked his beard. Suyu stared at the white sun divine stone, lightly shaking his head. I'm afraid it will not be as you wish. He was not as optimistic as the goateed old man. Although the number of vampires had been greatly reduced, the interval between the blinding white light released by the white sun divine stone was getting longer and longer. Initially, it could release the blinding white light once when the vampires were within 1,000 feet. Now, it could only release the light once when the vampires were within 300 feet. It was obvious that the white sun divine stone was gradually becoming weaker. As expected, the next morning, the white sun divine stone could only release the destructive white light once when the vampires were within 100 feet of it. Moreover, the power of the white light was much weaker, no longer able to sweep across the entire island. It could only sweep across half of the island. The goateed old man's expression sank. There were only 2 million vampires left, but the speed at which the white sun divine stone was destroying the enemy was greatly reduced. A few hours later, when there were only 1 million vampires left, the tide of blood had already surged within 10 feet of the white sun divine stone. Finally, one of the vampires pounced onto the divine stone. Although it was immediately swept into nothingness by the white light of the god stone, it left a shallow crack on the god stone. Although it was slight, it indicated that the divine stone had reached its limit. The goateed old man's expression changed drastically. The boss sisters also noticed that something was wrong, and their mood plummeted. With only 1 million vampires left, the divine stone might not be able to last until the very last moment. Father, what should we do? The divine stone can't hold on much longer. Bayu said anxiously. Apart from worrying about the destruction of their ancestors' relic, she was more worried about how the vampires would deal with them after obtaining the divine stone. They ignored them for now, focusing on dealing with the divine stone. But what if the divine stone was destroyed? There was a high chance that the vampires would devour them. The goateed old man turned his gaze to Suyu. You must have other plans for borrowing one of our White Emperor puppets. Please do not hide anything from us now. At this moment, the goateed old man had an indescribable fear and vigilance towards this seemingly young human. The other party's wisdom made him feel a sense of oppression, as if he were facing a colossus. It was as if everything was under the other party's control. Therefore, he could not help but ask Suyu for instructions. Suyu gazed at the island and said, just a little bit more. No one understood what he meant by just a little bit more. Was it because he was still a little bit away from making a move? Or was it something else? Another 2 hours passed. The number of vampires had dropped to 500,000, but the surface of the divine stone of White Sun was already covered with dense, fine cracks. The range of the blinding white light it emitted was extremely limited, less than 1/10 of what it used to be. The divine stone had reached its limit and could no longer withstand the onslaught of the remaining 500,000 vampires. But at this moment, a glimmer of light flashed in Suyu's eyes, and he said, "We're here." As he spoke, he strangely took a step back and retreated into the crowd of captives. At first glance, he was no different from the rest of the captives. If no one pointed him out, no one would believe that he was the commander-in-chief of all the living beings present. Creek, suddenly, on the other side of the island, in the area where the space ripples had appeared in the past, a shocking space ripple erupted. An enormous stone door appeared from within the ripple.